Shout out to Sarah. All right, let us do this. Let us do this. Let us do this. Let us close out Collin Griffiths, okay? I think it's going to take us about 3 hours. I'm hoping it's only 3 hours. If it's longer than that, I'm going to have to come back, okay? But yeah, it's only 3 hours. I think it's only 3 hours. In any event, I don't know if we need to do a recap or not. Probably not. Let us get into closing arguments. This is apart from Cross. Okay, I really love Cross. But I suppose closing probably second favorite part of a trial. But closing argument, not evidence. But this is, how the attorneys pretty much guide the jury in reaching a verdict. Oh, where's my notebook?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back again. My humblest thanks for your continued service in this case.
Okay.
As I mentioned yesterday, I'm sorry, was there an issue, Miss Samaro? Oh, nope. Notepads? Are there notepads not in the chairs?
Oh, I suppose she walked out with this.
Okay. All right. As I mentioned at the end of the day yesterday, both the state and the defendant have rested their cases. The attorneys will now have the opportunity, if they wish, to make a closing argument. Please remember that what the attorneys say is not evidence, nor is it your instruction on the law. However,
hold on. I need to find my notebook, okay? Because you guys know I'm taking notes. Let me find it.
Pay close attention to what they have to say. Their arguments are intended to aid you in understanding this case. Each side will have equal opportunity, but the state is entitled to divide its argument between an opening and a rebuttal after the defendant has given a closing argument. Does the state wish to give a closing argument?
I do, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, the brutality and the carnage that Collin Griffith unloaded on his mom on September 8th of 2024 is as real as it gets. Okay. First, I'd like to thank you.
That's a good opener. I like that.
You for not only being here, but for your attention. When you came to jury selection, you had no idea what type of case you might encounter.
Okay.
Would it be a petty theft, a DUI? But what you ultimately heard and sat on was a first-degree murder case with a second count of kidnapping. So to hear and see what you had to go through is not something that jurors see every day. And most certainly most people never think about or see.
Right.
But you've heard and seen the evidence. And later this morning and into the afternoon, you will be doing what you came here to do. And that is to dispense the ultimate form of justice. Not because I'm asking you to do this or suggesting you do this, but based upon the facts and the evidence, the defendant sits there, a guilty person who stabbed his own mother in the neck and then watched her bleed out in front of him. The lady that brought him into this world here on earth, he took out of this world and this earth. But see, at the end of this, he has to watch you come back through those doors. And he has to stand and he has to listen to the verdict.
Okay.
And that verdict is out of my control. It's out of their control. It is 100% in your control. And I have faith and confidence based upon what you heard and saw that you will do the right thing and you will hold him accountable for the fury he unleashed on his mom. Because the cold hard facts and the reality is quite unthinkable. When you
Mr. Levine, he's actually pretty good.
Really think about it. The reality of what that person did to his mom is a second-by-second nightmare for her. She left this world knowing that the person that took her out was the son that she gave everything to. When you're in the quietness and the privacy of the jury room, I want you to take a close look at that knife. And remember, each inch that knife went flying through Kathy Griffiths' neck, through each part of her human anatomy that Dr. Graham described. Because the reality of it, there isn't just a defendant and a victim and this happened and that happened, but the reality of it, for what the defendants accomplished, which is exactly what he wanted to do for so long.
Fever.
The writing was on the wall, ladies and gentlemen. The writing was on the wall. The defendant knew what he wanted to do, and it was just a matter of time. Why? Why did he have such deep-seated hatred for his mom? The lady that was just concerned about him making it to Domino's to work his 4 o'clock shift on Sunday. That's all that she wanted. They can say whatever they want about Kathy Griffith. It's all right. I'm not afraid. You shouldn't be afraid either. Because on Sunday, September 8th, Kathy Griffith did no harm, meant no harm to her son, Collin Griffith. She had one objective only, that cost her her life. And I don't know if it's sad or if it's admirable, but she knew and was willing to die and knew she would die at the hands of her son just to spend some more time with him. We heard from Detective Lacey Zenoniani that Kathy Griffith literally said she knew she would die, but as long as it meant that she could spend some more time with her son, it was worth it to her. And what thanks did Kathy Griffith get from her son? What thanks did she get? She got a foot-long butcher knife rammed into her neck. And you heard the pathway of destruction. Feeling everything through her neck, through those neck muscles, through the esophagus, through the trachea, through the cartilage.
What have you been up to, Brooklyn?
And on and on and on. As it ripped through her neck, and the shock and pain going through her body as the defendant was happy. As he followed through with what he said he would do. If nothing else, he's a man of his word. He said he would kill his mom, and he took her out.
That's a good line.
But you know what? Now he's in a court of law. Now he has to suffer whatever comes his way in the form of a verdict. And that verdict is guilty. That's guilty for what he did to his mom. As she's on the floor trying to get up, but she can't get up. She's got a gaping, open wound in her neck, compliments of her son. Thanks, Collin Griffith.
Oh, my.
Appreciate that. Kathy, who was literally dusting off his domino shoes, doing his laundry, buying him Starbucks, taking him to the movies, buying him things, getting him a phone, a computer. Now, yes, these are things that you would hope a mom would do, but not all moms do that. Whatever issues Kathy had, she didn't lack for love of her son.
Okay.
She wasn't there to do him harm on September 8th. Her motives were quite simple. Her motives were for Collin Griffith to return to her house.
I think out of everything that, out of everything that was elicited in this case about Kathy Griffith's character, my one big issue is really her, allowing one of her students to live in a home. That to me, I don't know if that's even forgivable. Obviously, it sounds like The kid might have, had problems in their personal lives, but this family, maybe they don't recognize it, but they're truly, truly, truly unstable. Okay. And for her to bring another student into a home to live with a man, because I actually forgot to do this. Don't look it up, but I wanted to see how old, we can look it up after the verdict. I wanted to see how old the father was, right? Because it sounds like he may have been older than her when she had a baby at 13. And if that is in fact the case, right, it is even more disturbing to think you can have somebody like, it's more disturbing for her to bring one of her students into her home only for the husband to have an inappropriate relationship with a kid. To me, that is, yeah, Kathy, I know what she was thinking. As far as the other stuff, I'm like, well, she had issues. We all have issues.
Household by 10 a.m. Sunday. That's all she wanted. She wanted her son, who she was dusting off his domino shoes and making sure that he had a clean uniform, to be home in time to go to work. That's all she wanted.
Well, I'm sorry, Brooklyn. Hopefully you got that taken care of. Is it the flu? I don't know that the flu actually gives you migraines, because I talked to somebody else on Friday. I talked to, he's not my friend, but he's another attorney that we're working on it's not a case, but we're working on a bar event together. And I don't know, he was talking about having come down with the flu for at least a week.
The clock was ticking. Once he turned 18, she knew he was gone. He wanted nothing to do with her. He had told her flat out he wanted to kill her. He had attacked her before. He had already killed somebody in Oklahoma.
Sheesh.
And she knew what was going to happen to her. But despite that, all that she wanted was every single minute she could have with her son. Well, she got to spend the last seconds of her life with her son as he watched on, as she gushed blood out of her open, gaping wound. The death was not instantaneous.
So Brooklyn says that he was thinking about this case over the weekend, and he thinks that the family must have slipped through the cracks of the system for nobody to notice nothing. It's very hard to believe. Yeah, I don't know. This is a complicated family. And I think towards the end of this, I even want to take a deeper dive into Mr. Wallantes. But the problem is I'm going to have to figure out jurisdiction, right? Because when the mother testified, she said that Kathy's father, I guess, was accused of having inappropriate relations with his own daughter. And it sounds like that went to court, but she did not even know the outcome. That is so questionable. She did not know the outcome of the case where her husband was accused of, being improper with her own daughter. They have a lot going on. A lot going on.
She bled internally. She bled externally. She was fighting to get up. You see her arm finally comes underneath the island. And there comes a certain point, ladies and gentlemen, where that last drop of blood came out of her, where she took her last breath and she died and left this earth knowing that her son butchered her. And that's the reality of it. You take a look at that knife and you'll know what it went through, who it went through, who was holding it, what their intention was, and what they wanted to do. Operation Kill Mom accomplished. That's exactly what Collin Griffith did. This little PowerPoint here for some things to look at, for you to remember when you deliberate. September 8th, 2024, Kathy Griffith was murdered by Collin Griffith. That's as simple as it gets. But going back the year earlier, the first person the defendant killed before he killed Kathy Griffith, he killed that person when he shot that person 2 times with a hand.
Listen, Levine has great restraint, and that's why, again, I've said. I mean, I didn't watch the rest of this closing. I don't know if he's going to slip up ahead, but so far, he's done a good job of not causing a mistrial. Okay, because he could have easily said that, this kid killed his father. He does not appear to be reading from a script or a teleprompter. So, pretty good job.
Handgun, once in the chest.
And that's why that stuff out of the YSL trial, Fulton County, I do not know. I'm gonna leave that case alone. All right, I'm leaving the case alone.
And once in the head. Now you'll remember the importance of that as we continue on. You'll recall when they downloaded.
That's correct, Brooklyn. He's not allowed to. And that's why I'm saying that it is commendable that he is pretty much speaking from the heart without a script or a teleprompter, and he's not causing a mistrial. Because somebody that I write all my stuff, but it would not. How do I put this? I'm just saying what he's doing is kind of difficult to do, right? Because he does know the identity of the individual that Collin Griffiths killed prior to this. If we have to compare this to the YSL trial where they were just messing up along the way, for him to be on this case by himself as the prosecuting attorney with, maybe somebody else helped him. Maybe there's a paralegal that, sorted things out for him. But in this moment where he can pretty much talk about the Oklahoma killing without identifying who it is and, causing a mistrial, that is admirable to me.
The defendant's phone.
It shows that he's focused.
And they saw something on September 8th that Kathy texted Collin. Now, Collin Griffith didn't need a reason or an excuse to be mad at his mom. Okay. You've heard through so many witnesses, law enforcement, countless witnesses, that the defendant explicitly verbalized that he would kill his mom. Not only that, but he thought about different ways to accomplish that. And a reoccurring theme was that he would stab her. You don't have to guess what he was thinking or what he wanted to do. You heard from multiple law enforcement officers the defendant's statements about that he would kill his mom. And when they asked how, he gave a plethora of ways, including throwing her out of a car, shooting her, but stabbing her was a reoccurring theme. For whatever reason, the defendant got off on that. And you will recall that the defendant's anger towards his mom, it was already over brimming. But his anger was just intensified when on Sunday, September 8th, the last day of Kathy's life, she wrote the following to Collin. Mind you, her only intention, despite all these threats that she didn't want to have to carry through with, was to get the defendant home. That's it. But she wrote to him, Collin, the recordings of you admitting to killing, and then she wrote the person's name, and planning the murder. There are 4 different instances from my Ring camera, are all going to Bob, Susie, Amanda, and Chris at 3 p.m. today. Plus the recovered audio from Chuck's iCloud, where you told your dad you hated me and I was an evil bitch, are being sent too. Let's stop for a minute. The defendant called and thinks his mom was an evil bitch. That has just so much malice and hatred, once again, to the lady that was trying to do everything she could. I mean, God, we saw Ring videos. She's cleaning all the time. She's doing laundry. She makes sure that his house is stocked with food. She has clean clothes for him. He has his own room. He has his own Xbox, computers, cell phone. She's giving him the credit card to go to Starbucks to buy sandwiches and drinks, taking him to the movies, anything and everything to make him happy.
All right.
And you know what kind of thanks she got. Thanks to Collin Griffith, stand-up guy that he is. And then what did she expect from him? Did she expect for him to be remodeling the house or doing all this work? No. She wanted minimal things. She wanted respect as any mother deserved. She wanted the defendant to pick up a damn finger and do some chores, to weed whack the backyard. Was it 10 acres of property that she wanted him to go outside in the 90-degree weather and push a lawnmower? No. It was a nice, modest backyard that she wanted the defendant to take care of some business, like the man he was supposed to turn into. But if it interfered, God forbid, with him playing video games or him taking his walk, then piss on his mom. That was his attitude. It's 100% his attitude. He didn't want to be bothered. She wanted him to put up a bookshelf. The defendant didn't want to do it. She wanted him to clean up the room because there were a bunch of ants and cockroaches that were crawling around Collin Griffiths' candy bags, but it might interfere with him getting some fresh air. So he just blew her off. Day after day, time after time, the defendant wanted to do nothing but what he wanted to do. And you know what? Life would go on if that was the worst of his ways. But he also had that hatred. So every time his mom would ask him to do something reasonable, that hatred would grim. He has told you what he thinks of his mom, that she is an evil bitch. This is what he's saying about his own mom who brought him into this world, his own flesh and blood, and that's what he thinks of her. Kathy continues on. My dad is sending me his recordings of you telling him how you planned my murder back in February. Audio, video, email, texts, and phone records are all being sent. So we continue on with the PowerPoint. This is the last day of Kathy Griffiths' life. The defendant's life would go on, but Kathy Griffith would cease to exist here on this earth. And there she is on Sunday, unsuspecting the violence that would be coming her way from her son. It should have been just another Sunday afternoon. Should she have not gone over there? Should Collin have gone somewhere else? You know, these questions really don't matter because the reality is what happened. She said there are two things that are going to happen. He's either going to come home with me or he can follow in his own car. She didn't say I'm going to go over there. And
that was not exactly established as to whether she had a prescription for this. And that is my one critique of the prosecution, okay? Just like you, Brooklyn, I've been thinking about this case over and over again, but I do not think that the prosecution thoroughly cross-examined Susan, okay? There were a lot of avenues because Susan's testimony was so critical to the defense. I'd not necessarily say that it destroyed the prosecution's case, but she said a lot about Kathy, right? And not even that, the defense overall cross-examination of the prosecution's witnesses, right? As far as eliciting, you know, the drugs in a system that were, you know, reported in the toxicology report. The defense pretty much questioned the doctor. I don't remember his name anymore. The one from Ireland. What's the defense attorney's name? Thornhill cross-examined the doctor to the extent whether the substances that were found in Kathy, whether they were obtained legally or not. We don't have an answer to that. We don't have an actual answer to that. And again, my critique of the prosecution is that they should have gone a little harder on Susan, but I understand probably the prosecutor wants to be liked by the jury, and him going extra hard at Big Sue, that probably would not have worked out in his favor. So we're not exactly sure, but I still think that he should have elicited more information on cross than what he did. I think he handled Big Sue with kid gloves, and I didn't like that.
I'm going to smoke him. I'm going to beat his ass. I'm going to stab him. I'm going to shoot him. I'm going to do any of that stuff. She wanted to go over there and bring him back. She didn't even want to have to go drive 2.5 hours over there. It would have been real simple if the defendant just came home. But once again, that's beside the point, because the reality is he didn't come home. He didn't want to come home. That's the way life is sometimes. But she wanted to accomplish one thing, to have the defendant come home, not to do him harm. And she did nothing to him. No violence, no threats, nothing. That was it. She even told her mom, one of the last conversations was when she got over there, if he refused to come, then she would call the police.
Yeah.
So there's Kathy wearing the exact clothes that she changed into that she would die in. She was a big fan of coffee. The shirt she was wearing said something about coffee or die, kind of like the motto, live free or die. Mm. So there's Kathy, unsuspecting of what would happen a few short hours later.
That's crazy.
With her black t-shirt and her jean shorts and her black Under Armour flip-flops that she would be killed in. She picked up her Kate Spade bag, purse, backpack, put it over her shoulder. Interestingly enough, if you call one of the ladies, I don't recall if it was Miss Bell or Miss Jones, but they said when she pulled up and when she got out of the car that she threw her bag over her shoulder, okay, and she went up to the house, which is exactly how it appears that she carried her bag. The same bag, ladies and gentlemen, that she was holding when the defendant attacked her and stabbed her in the neck, the same bag that got blood all over it, holding her bag over her shoulder, and her keys and everything else that fell on the ground when the defendant attacked her. Does that sound like somebody, a lady who's attacking the defendant with their bag over their shoulder, holding their car keys and their charger? Of course not, because it didn't happen that way. And then this was it. You all remember when the door closed. In retrospect, it's quite eerie. The door closes. Kathy never returned to that house. That house that she kept immaculately clean. Kathy went off with her bag over her shoulder. A stock fridge, stock snacks, clean. Doesn't look like there's a thing out of place. Keeping a clean, safe, loving environment for Collin. Did Kathy have issues? She did. But she's a human being. You heard about her history and what she had to endure.
Right.
Did that mean she should be stabbed and left to bleed out by her own son? Of course not. That's why he needs to be held responsible. So this fancy overhead picture. What is the importance of this? Well, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the jury instructions. I'm not going to go into a bunch of jury instructions. You're going to hear those. They're very important. They're long, but I'm going to hit you with two quick things. The first degree murder and the kidnapping.
Okay.
I want you to look at this picture. This is where Collin Griffiths.
Yeah, I think I know what jury instruction the defense is going to hammer home, but I don't know. I did not listen to defense closing, so let's see. I think they're going to focus on stand your ground, but let's see.
Griffith murdered his mom with premeditation and intent. This is where Collin Griffith stabbed his mom and killed her. You see the mulch, you see the entryway, you see the carport. Now you'll recall that Miss Sally Bell, the lady getting ready for church, lived right here. Nancy Jones lived here. Nancy Jones had a more obstructed view just because of the sheer angle of it. This corner here of Susan Detman's house prevented her from actually seeing what was going on. But she did see the defendant reach out, grab Kathy, and pull her in. Now, Sally Bell had a much clearer view. Sally Bell, time is important, okay? Time is important. You guys like a good timeline, and you have a pretty good timeline. Sally Bell goes to church religiously, no pun intended. She gets ready, she leaves roughly a little before 5 o'clock. Every Sunday, her and her husband get ready, they go to church. The defendant wasn't going to church on Sunday, he was getting ready to murder his mom. So Sally Bell, she sees the defendant after Kathy comes over. And is Kathy mad? Is she happy? Of course she's not happy. That doesn't mean she's being violent, and she wasn't violent. She was moving her hands. Sally made it clear. It wasn't threatening or violent or physical. She was animated, moving her hands as she was talking. And she wanted her son to come home. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So Sally saw and heard, and it was loud enough because she was inside looking out her front window. She saw the defendant grab his own mom. Remember, this isn't a stranger, which would be bad enough. He grabbed his own mom by the hair. He thinks she's an evil bitch. He wants to kill her. He's told people he's going to kill her. He's battered her and attacked her before on November 14th in Port Charlotte. And now he's just doing the same thing again. And his mom paid the price. But you know what? He's going to pay the price when you come back with a guilty verdict. He is going to pay the price because of your verdict. And he grabbed his mom by the hair, and she said, stop, you're hurting me, let go. This is his mom begging and pleading for her own son to stop pulling her hair. Who does that? He does that, and he did it. So what happens? Who's doing violence to who? I ask you that. Who is being violent to who? The mom is not being violent in any way, shape, or form to her son. She is doing nothing to him. Nothing to him. But good old Collin Griffith grabs his mom and he yanks her, he pulls her, he drags her. Who cares what verb you want to use? The point of the story is that he pulled her and dragged her into the house. She didn't have a choice because her hair was being pulled and her head and her body was being dragged into the house. Why did the defendant do that? Because he was about to unleash and quench his bloodlust for his mom. He was going to accomplish what he wanted to do for whatever it was, weeks, months, a year. And his bloodlust was going to be quenched at the price and at the cost of his mom and her dignity and her life. So why did he bring her inside? Well, it's quite clear why he brought her inside: to unleash additional violence on her. He wanted to isolate her. He didn't want witnesses to what he was about to do. Okay? That was roughly around 5 o'clock. Now, I want to tell you something. The 911 call was at 6:14, okay? That is an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you something. They weren't talking or hanging out for an hour and 15 minutes. Quite the contrary. This was a powder keg that was exploding. This was a powder keg that was exploding. What was he doing for that hour and 15 minutes after he killed his mom? Connect the dots, do the math. But as soon as he pulled her inside, it was just the continuation of the beginning of the end. So for kidnapping, I'm going to start with count two. Count two, kidnapping. This is what I have to prove. 3 elements. Collin Griffith forcibly or secretly or by threat confined or abducted or imprisoned Catherine Griffith against her will. That's exactly what he did. He forcibly grabbed her by the hair and pulled her inside against her will. Did she enjoy that? Did she walk into that house voluntarily when Collin dragged her inside? When, as she said in one of the videos, when he already beat her ass on a number of occasions? No, quite the contrary. He forcibly did those things against her will. So now Kathy knows what's going to happen. Maybe she doesn't know she's about to get killed, but she knows the violence that's about to happen. Because now the defendant has her all alone with no eyes to see, no neighbors to help, and he has her all alone. He's a lot bigger than her. He's a lot stronger than her. He weighs a lot more. He's younger than her. And she was alone. Now, this is no stranger to her. She shouldn't have had to have been afraid of her own son. But now the reality is he's dragged her in by the hair. Okay. She's begging for him to let go. But does he care? No. And he amps it up even more. He yanks her and pulls her so hard that, as we recall, in the mulch here is one of her AirPods. Boom. They go inside. She would, you know what? She never came out of that house again alive. She came out dead, with no blood in her body. Thanks to Collin Griffith. This is the last time that she would enter any place. And this is the pathway to further destruction. This is literally the trail to her death at the hands and the knife of Collin Griffith.
That must have been a gruesome scene. I mean, they're not even showing it.
Yanked her by the hair. She didn't stand a chance. He dragged her, pulled her, get out of the source, use whatever words you want to use, and he brought her, boom, through the living room. Her other AirPod falls out. This is the violence and the force that the defendant's doing. Not only that, she loses her AirPod case. And we know where this is headed. We know the path that this is headed. That house is immaculate. Susan Detman keeps an immaculate house. That is a fact. That is evidence. Susan Detman keeps an immaculate house. Kathy Griffith, her daughter, keeps an immaculate house. There's no signs of a long fight. Kathy Griffith was in no position or no desire to fight. And the defendant had all the power, all the sick, twisted power, all the strength, all the size to his short, defenseless, unarmed mom. Does that sound like a fair fight? Or does that sound cowardly and violent? Well, that's what kept going on. There he is. That is the face of Collin Griffith after he murdered his mom.
All right. What did it look like?
Those are the eyes that looked at his mom as he shoved that knife so deep in her neck that it literally came out the other side of her neck. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Collin Griffith.
Collin, I'm saying Collin, Brooklyn, I believe it's live. As far as whether it's with or without, I cannot remember. I don't know. Was this a death penalty case? I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't want to look it up. Let's watch because it's almost over. All right.
Griffith dragged his mom over there. Collin Griffith, in his mind, now we're moving on. Well, I suppose before we move on to the premeditation part, I told you there were 3 elements of kidnapping. We've already hit the first one. Second one, Collin Griffith had no lawful authority to do so. Of course, he had no lawful authority to do so. You don't have lawful authority to batter somebody, to grab them by the hair against their will and yank them into a house so you can abuse them and violate them and destroy them more. Element 2 is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And third, Collin Griffith acted with intent to inflict bodily harm upon or to terrorize Catherine Griffith or to commit or facilitate the commission of any murder. That's a lot of words, but you'll take your time when you have the jury instructions. What did Collin Griffith do? He acted with the intent to harm Kathy Griffith, to physically destroy Kathy Griffith, to terrorize Kathy Griffith, and to kill Kathy Griffith. That third element's proved every which way possible. Because of that, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant is guilty of kidnapping.
All right.
So when you deliberate and when you talk about the evidence and the law, and when you discuss amongst yourselves, and when you do the analysis, I submit to you that I have proven through the evidence that the defendant is guilty of kidnapping. but only if it could end there. Only if it could end there. Life would have gone on for Kathy Griffith, but it couldn't end there because of the defendant's conscious decisions, because of his actions. It couldn't end there. Life could have gone on, but it didn't for Catherine Griffith because of what the defendant wanted to accomplish and what he didn't stop doing until he had accomplished it. And then to figure out, dang, what do I do now? But you get to see and hear everything that happened next. So we move on to first degree murder. That, once again, these aren't abstract concepts. This is the reality. That defendant reached into the butcher block and pulled out a knife. It probably made that sound when that metal.
The one thing I kind of do not understand is if Big Sue's trailer or mobile home was not furnished, why did they have, well, maybe they had cutlery and just no furniture?
Comes out of the wooden butcher block. Well, Kathy didn't have her AirPods in, so she can hear crystal clear. And that knife comes sliding out of that butcher block. And Kathy would have known at that point that what the defendant had told her, what the defendant had told law enforcement, that he would kill her and stab her, that's how it was going to end for her. So the reality is the defendant pulled the knife. Picture doesn't quite do it justice. I'm not going to stand up here and hold the knife because you're going to look at it in the privacy and solitude of the jury room, and you're going to look at that knife and you're going to see firsthand where that knife has been and who put it there. So Kathy gets stabbed in the neck with such force. You know the pathway, you know everything that happened. You heard from Dr. Garavan, who was very detailed about his expertise, how many countless stabbing cases he's worked.
Oh, in Brooklyn, I saw that Karen Reed filed a motion to dismiss. So I did not actually take a look at the motions, nor did I listen to any of the videos. I only saw the recommended videos.
Never has it been an accident or somebody falling on a knife. The force that knife took, the thing in accident cases he's worked, never has it been an accident or somebody falling on a knife. The force that knife took, the things that it cut through, the open, gaping wound, her bleeding out to the last drop is.
Yeah, that is ironic. I guess the house itself may have been clean, but there's a lot to be said about the people that actually occupy the space. And then, oh, what's up, old bag? Yeah, I'm sorry, old bag. I'm sorry. But I mean, I did say that I was going to start at 4:30. I said 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Maybe I could have scheduled a video earlier, but I was not home, okay? I could have done it yesterday, but I was under the weather yesterday. I was not feeling too good.
Gone. So, back on September 8th, 2024, after Kathy struggled to get up, struggled to do whatever somebody who's just about to die tries to do, knowing that their son just ensured their death. Mind you, this was at about 5 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, because that's when Sally Bell saw the defendant yank his mom in by the hair.
Yeah, we were
5 o'clock. Yeah,
we were out and about on Friday and today. Today we were out for way too long. Yeah, Zeta did have a good time. She's excited to, be going back to school. I'm not too happy about going back to work. I could use another week. I could maybe even another 2 days. I'll take 2 days.
Takes an hour and 14 minutes for the defendant to call 911. Yeah, it did. You're going to hear 2 clips. One is just the very intro. It establishes the time. It establishes the first words out of the defendant's mouth.
Yeah.
Then you're going to hear the defendant's contradictory, absurd attempt at blaming Kathy Griffith for this.
And Oldbag, were you able to keep your hands out of the candy jar? Did you go snooping around? Yes, no, maybe? What are you thinking? Minute Maid.
For first-degree murder, I have to prove 3 things. Catherine Griffith is dead.
That is admirable, okay? I would have never thought, I for sure thought you went snooping.
That's an understatement.
You deserve an iron sticker, okay?
Number 2, the death was caused by the criminal act of Collin Griffith. It was a homicide by Collin Griffith stabbing his mom in the neck and watching her and letting her and being happy that she bled out and died. And 3, there was a premeditated killing of Catherine Griffith.
All right, Oldbag.
Ladies and gentlemen, when the defendant dragged her inside,
it's all going to come to an end tonight,
and dragged her to the back of the house to the kitchen, when he reached for the knife, when he pulled the knife out, think about it. Any step of the way, he could have thought to himself, you know what? This is messed up. I shouldn't be doing this. I can't be doing this. Yeah, I want to kill her, but this is my mom. You know what? Damn, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do this. He had time to reflect. But his reflection was it Collin 1 or Collin 2? We'll get to that a little later.
All right.
But his reflection was, yeah, I am going to kill, I am going to stab this evil bitch. And that's not me saying it. That's the defendant's own words. He showed his intentions by his actions and by his words and what he said he was going to do. He was going to kill that evil bitch, his own mom. And so he did. So Kathy Griffith is laid out on the floor, has taken her last breath, has bled out her last drop of blood. Catherine Griffith has been murdered by Collin Griffith. The crime is over. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
All right.
Now, not to complicate things, but there's another way that I can prove first-degree murder. And I submit to you, I've proved it both ways. It's my burden, of course, to prove the crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. But there's 2 different ways that I can prove first-degree murder. Both end with the same result, which is guilty of first-degree murder.
Okay.
The other way that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but it's called first-degree felony murder.
Oh,
I've already shown you, ladies and gentlemen, why the defendant is guilty of premeditated first-degree murder.
Okay.
And why the defendant is guilty of kidnapping. So when you go back and deliberate, and when you fill out the verdict form, while it might not be easy.
Okay, so Brooklyn is saying that he is not connecting with Levine. I don't know. I'm the opposite, actually. I'm enjoying the closing.
And nothing is ever happy about sitting on a murder trial, but you'll know that you did the right thing based upon the evidence and based upon justice.
What would you have liked to see, Brooklyn? Did you want him to be a little more animated, jumping up and down? I don't know, maybe a bit more bass in his voice. I don't know how I can do that, but.
So the defendant's guilty of first-degree murder, premeditated, and kidnapping. Another way that a prosecutor can prove first-degree murder is first-degree felony murder.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you this first, little insight. In order to convict the defendant of first-degree felony murder, it is not necessary for the state to prove that Collin Griffith had a premeditated design or intent to kill. When you run through the 3 elements, Catherine Griffith is dead. Mm-hmm. That's number 1. Number 2, while engaged in the commission of a kidnapping, right, Collin Griffith caused the death of Catherine Griffith. And 3, Collin Griffith was the person.
All right, well, apparently Old Bag is disconnected from Levine as well. I don't see how, because I'm eating all of this up.
Who actually killed Collin Griffith. Her own flesh and blood.
Old Bag said he's
brutalized her. We'll go to the 911 call, probably an hour or so after he had already murdered his mom.
What was he doing for an hour?
18/14/11, 2nd September 8, 2024.
911, what's your gasoline emergency?
Hampton, Florida. I don't know the fucking, I don't know the secret.
Now, clip 2. What I want you to notice about clip 2, ladies and gentlemen, is that
Cali girl.
It
is interesting, though. I just thought about this. There was no any type of Google searches on Collin's phone between that 1 hour period of the mother bleeding out and him calling 911. That's interesting.
911 operator asks a very clear, simple question. Listen, what caused the bleeding? And you're going to hear and see, and you probably remember that the defendant.
Yeah, we're closing out, Callie. We're closing out Collin Griffiths today. As far as what's happening tomorrow, I have no idea. But we're closing this case. I mean, if I wanted to keep Old Bag in more suspense, maybe we get to the verdict tomorrow. I don't know.
Didn't respond for many, many seconds, maybe 6 seconds. He didn't respond. And the 911 operator said more emphatically, listen, what caused the bleeding?
I don't know, Old Bag. It sounds like he only tried to stop the bleeding an hour later when, the operator told him to or instructed him to.
And then the defendant gave 2 diametrically opposed different explanations because he wasn't going to tell the truth about what happened. And he was certainly going to try to escape from the charges and blame his mom when he is the person that murdered his own mom. So the first thing he says is, she got into a fight. What do you mean she got into a fight? Like he's trying to distance himself from what actually happened. She got into a fight and she lunged at me with a knife and she fell on it. So that's his first explanation. He's painting a picture that his mom lunged at him with a knife, tripped, and somehow fell on the knife. That's preposterous. Not being disrespectful, but that's preposterous when you think about common sense and you think about physics and when you think about reality. That just didn't happen. The evidence is to the contrary, but that's his first statement, that she lunged at him with this knife and tripped, and she somehow falls on the knife. That didn't happen. Then the 911 operator says, where is the knife right now? And who did she get in a fight with? And then the defendant says something completely different because it's not the truth. Truth doesn't change. The truth is that the defendant stabbed his mom right in the neck, and then it ripped through and came out the other side. That's reality of what happened. And then the defendant changes his story. He thinks he's helping himself by elaborating or trying to.
And then Brooklyn says that he needed to take a shower after the incident and put some stuff in the washing machine. I do not, we don't have that. And besides, what is this? Fire rescue took it upon themselves to rinse the blood off of him. So he did not actually have to do anything. He just had to wait for fire rescue to wash him off.
To prove to himself what happened or prove to others. And then he changes his story. Instead of her lunging at him and
how's your Sunday going, Benji?
Falling on the knife.
Are you working?
Now he says, she came at me and we got into a fight for a long time. Then she got on top of me and fell on it. Twisted it back, whatever that means.
So listen, what caused the bleeding? Listen, Where's the knife right now? And who did she get in a fight with? We got to go for a long time.
We can barely hear anything.
Collin Griffith murdered his mom, ladies and gentlemen. This is a picture of Kathy Griffith with the person that murdered her son.
All right, Benji.
This is a picture of Kathy Griffith alive and smiling and happy next to the same person that she knew was going to kill her. Yet she was willing to suffer and pay the ultimate price, that was her life, at the hands of her son in order to spend a little more time with him before she left this earth. So that person, Kathy Griffith, live, full of life, smiling and happy, turned in.
I mean, I presume that they're actually going to get the actual call itself, the audio, and for whatever words are inaudible, it has to remain that. The prosecution cannot try and fill out or fill in those gaps. Olbag says this case is kind of how I feel about the murder case. I didn't feel like it was beyond a reasonable doubt. Oh, murder was definitely beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no question about murder. Murder was without a doubt beyond a reasonable doubt. And he did not do himself any favors by getting on the stand. And in this case, are you saying that the prosecution did not prove that Collin killed his mother, or that he basically dragged her into the house or kidnapped her?
Into this person, bleeding out on her mom's kitchen floor, with her good old son standing by to watch her bleed out. And there's her Kate Spade backpack purse that was over her shoulder. Once again, you saw it over her shoulder in the video. You also heard from Nancy Jones that when Kathy went up to the house, she had her bag over her shoulder. And that bag got drenched in blood as it literally spurted out of the huge gaping hole in her neck, compliments of her son. When fire rescue...
Kelly, murder, first and foremost, he should not have been out there killing the wife and the son. But him getting on that stand, that he did himself no favors. Talking about the dog, I think the dog was called Baba or something. The act, the snot, he should not have gotten up on that stand.
Who shows up and law enforcement shows up, they say they can literally see through her neck. They can see into the organs in her neck. And that...
reasonable doubt is reasonable, Olbag. It's not beyond all doubt.
Is the end result of Collin Griffith's hatred and violence towards his mom. A gaping hole.
Brooklyn says Alec did not do that.
From that knife. And we saw that as she's getting stabbed, she doesn't stand a chance. She comes out of her Under Armour flip-flops. Her keys crash to the ground. Her purse crashes to the ground, falling off of her shoulder. Her charging cords fall to the ground. She struggles to get up. You can see things she's grabbing onto.
Which ways?
And she takes her last breath, and she leaves this earth knowing that Collin Griffith, her own son, murdered her. I'll have a chance to talk to you, ladies and gentlemen, after the defenses with a much shorter wrap up. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. And when you come back through those doors, you should come back with nothing short of pure 100% justice. And that's finding the defendant guilty as charged of percent justice. You should come back with nothing short of pure 100% justice.
All right, I'll give you guys.
And that's finding the defendant guilty as charged of both counts for what he did to his mom on September 8th, 2024.
All right, Mr. Levine. Mr. Levine, that was good. That was good. That was good. Let's see what's going on here. Are they meeting out in the hallway? Very good, Mr. Levine. What's going on here? Did I miss something back here? You guys know I need to see everything. I am that nosy. Maybe they don't talk about anything. What happened? All right, maybe nothing happens. Let's get into Thornhill. All right, come on, Thornhill.
Present with both lawyers. State's counsel is present. Are we ready for the jury?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's see. Dang, the jury's taking forever.
Ms. Thornhill?
All right, Ms. Thornhill.
Good morning, everyone. Sure seems like the state would like you to focus on the emotion and the drama rather than on the actual facts.
Okay, let me see what Callie's saying. Callie says that I think Collin did it, but everything that was going on with his family makes it hard for me to just say he should be locked up forever. All right. Brooklyn says Collin did it. Okay, Callie's saying I think. Brooklyn is like, I know he did it. Okay. And then old bag, Callie, me too. I was trying to explain that. Okay. All right. So apparently Brooklyn says that, not apparently, because Brooklyn did say that murder did that. There's no question
You
about it.
can't ignore the facts in this case.
Okay. Come on, Thorn.
What's your job as jurors? It's to decide whether the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt
All right.
that Collin kidnapped and murdered his mother, and that her death was not excusable or justified.
All right.
That's your job. We start with the presumption of innocence, as the judge will remind you again when he reads the instructions. That means that you have to believe that Collin is innocent, unless and until the state can overcome that presumption with evidence beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. Not words that they may say, characterization.
My mic is not connected. Hopefully my audio is fine. I don't know why. Oh, never mind. I figured it out. It was not plugged in. All right, let's go.
Of how things might have happened, but actual facts. We can offer interpretations of how you should look at various facts. The facts also include testimony, but it is your job to decide what the facts are and what they mean, and whether the state has used those facts to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin is guilty of anything.
Okay. Is Thornhill talking to you guys or not? Or do you think she's just as flat as Levine?
So the state offered a number of witnesses. You guys have been here for over a week now.
All right.
And they presented a lot of exhibits and evidence. I'm not going to go through all of the witnesses and all of the exhibits. You all took notes. And the exhibits will all be back there in the jury room with you. So you can
What are
look
you
at
gonna
any
focus
number
on?
of them. You can look at all the text messages that were admitted into evidence, even if they weren't all played on the screen. You can listen to things. You can watch the ring video. That will be up to you. Those are facts. The witnesses. In a move that you might find surprising, I'm not going to argue to you that the state's witnesses were unreliable or that you shouldn't believe them, with one exception.
Okay. Who, Volantes?
Most of the witnesses were pretty straightforward in answering the questions.
What
Like I
is
said,
she
it's up
good
to you to
at?
decide
What do you like about
how
her
to
closing?
interpret what they said. But the one exception, and it might not even matter in the long run to your inquiry, your decision, because for the most part, what the witnesses told you isn't in dispute.
Okay.
And that one exception is Robert Wolantis.
That's what I thought. I called him Volante, I think.
I may have seemed harsh with him when I questioned him, and I apologize for that. I wouldn't wish the death of a child on anyone ever. But Mr. Wolantis wanted you to believe that he was very close with Kathy and with Collin, and that he was close enough with Collin that Collin confided in him several months before Kathy died. So, how close was Robert Wolantis
Yeah, that's
with
problematic.
and Kathy? He was not invited to Kathy's celebration of life.
Mm. There's
He didn't
more
even
to
know
it.
that she hadn't been buried. If you recall him going on and on about how funerals are for those left behind. And that's not to say that, it's not to say anything bad about Mr. Wolantis, but it's something you can consider in evaluating the credibility of his testimony.
All right, for old back, she's not, banging on the podium hard enough. She needs to stomp and do something, maybe twirl. I don't know that her closing, or at least her demeanor, is that different from the prosecution.
He went on one trip with Kathy a few years ago that Susan paid for.
Then she's gonna be balling.
He talked to Collin on the phone a total of 3 times, unless you believe.
All right, hold on. I'm getting distracted. So if I remember correctly, didn't Big Sue testify to Mr. Volante losing his nursing license? That makes me wonder if that is related to the charges where Kathy was the victim or not, or maybe it's unrelated. I don't know, but I'm wondering. I mean, not that Big Sue's that all that reliable.
There was this second mysterious phone that Mr. Wolantis claimed that he talked to Collin all the time on for
Brooklyn, what did this woman explain? Like, tell me, literally, she's been up here for like 2 minutes. What did she explain?
Either every week or every other week. There's no evidence of that. Susan told you about a phone that she got for Collin when Kathy had kicked him out one of the several times that she bought for him to use because he'd been kicked out without his phone. It was active for a couple of weeks.
Nancy Jones.
It's another thing you can consider in deciding whether you think Robert Wolantis was reliable.
All right.
You also have to consider whether Robert Wolantis was trying to make himself seem more intimately connected with his daughter's life and his grandson's life.
And I don't know. Now that, okay, so Thornhill she's not testifying. Closing, she pretty much said that the prosecution's witnesses were credible with the exception of Volante or Volantis or whatever his name is. Okay. That is kind of, I think from the defense perspective, that might be her shooting herself in the foot, because if the other folks are reliable, they're credible, then Walante is not really adding that much of value to the prosecution's case, because the main purpose for him testifying is about, this so-called conversation where Collin pretty much said that he was planning to take the mother out, and the other witnesses, the prosecution witnesses, testified to the same thing. So I don't know if discrediting only Walantes really helps the defense.
And now with Kathy's death.
Obed would like a twirl.
Remember, he was the one who called Polk County Sheriff's Office. He was not the go-to family member that the detectives wanted to speak to get information.
Okay.
They didn't seek him out. He reached out to them. And he reached out to them only weeks after Kathy died. Not right away, not, oh my goodness, my daughter died. I have this important information that may help in the investigation. No, it wasn't until after he watched Grady Judd's press conference that was extremely detailed in describing the wound that Kathy suffered and how she died that Mr. Walantes called the sheriff's office.
Thank you.
You can consider that in determining whether you think his testimony is reliable.
What are you guys talking about?
Can also consider the language he used in describing what Collin said to him, allegedly, about wanting to slit his mother's throat and watch the blood and life seep from her.
Rainbow chocolate sprinkles.
You've heard Collin's words several
Edible
times on the 911 call, on the Ring videos.
Uh-huh.
Does that sound like something Collin would say, or a way he would describe anything that he says? Or does that sound like Mr. Walantes putting words in Collin's mouth? All that to say, even if you believe Mr. Walantes, which I urge you not to believe what he said, he claims Collin told him. But even if you do, that does not prove beyond a...
You did not miss much, Benji. Defense began closing. Old bag thinks her closing is flat. Brooklyn, Brooklyn's always skewed towards the defense anyways. He thinks she's doing great. I don't see a difference in, delivery from the prosecution.
A reasonable doubt.
She just started, though,
that Collin murdered his mother. And you have to remember that too. That's what the state has to prove to you. So dealing with that one witness, let's move on to the charges against Collin.
Where's the passion in this,
the kidnapping.
Brooklyn?
The state has to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin, by force, threat, or secrecy, confined, abducted, or imprisoned or isolated Kathy against her will. And at the time he supposedly did any of those things, at that time, he had the intent to commit great bodily harm or terrorize her. Okay? So what did the state present to try to convince you that there was a kidnapping?
Okay.
They presented the witnesses, the neighbors, Sally Bell and Nancy K. Jones. Both of them are neighbors of Susan's. You've seen the photos of where they lived. And you heard them say that Kathy was the one being aggressive right when she arrived. Okay. She whipped the car out of the driveway to pull it up against the curb or the grass. She slammed her car door. She slung her backpack over her back and she marched up to the door and went inside. Went inside that house of her own accord. When she comes back out of the house, she's throwing things into Collin's car. And you can see in the photo of the interior of his car, there's clothes thrown in the back and there's his computer and his phone on the front seat. And she's yelling and gesturing and stomping around. And then she goes back up to where Collin is standing in the doorway. Because remember, neither of those witnesses told you he was ever anywhere other than in the doorway. Not in the mulch where an AirPod was found, but in the doorway around the corner. So Kathy comes up to him. She's making a scene. Obviously, a scene
how's that getting
that's
better?
loud enough, noticeable enough that the neighbors are looking to see what's going on. She's already drawn their notice. And as she's on the carport floor and Collin's standing in the doorway and she's still gesturing, he puts his hand, and the witnesses differ, on her neck area, on her shoulder, by her ponytail, and they said pulled her inside. Not dragged, not grabbed her by the ponytail, more like, and this is something you can decide, more like an ushering, like, oh crap, you're causing a scene, but like Kathy can, seeing it in the state's own evidence, let's bring this inside so that we don't get the wrath of the neighbors up or cause attention to be drawn even more to our argument. That's a more reasonable interpretation of those facts. It's reasonable to interpret that Collin was embarrassed by his mom and didn't want to air their dirty laundry in the carport. Now, she did say, let go, you're hurting me. Okay, that's a fact. That she said that is not in dispute. But you can't just accept a statement by anyone, but let alone by Kathy at face value. Okay, so she claims, you're hurting me, let go. Does she pull away from him? Nope. Witnesses never said anything about that. Did she try and stay at the bottom of the steps where she was gesturing at him? No, the witnesses didn't say that. They said that her feet actually moved up the steps. That indicates a willingness to go inside. That's a reasonable interpretation of what those witnesses told you. Did she say, I don't want to go back inside? No. Did she grab onto Collin in some way to get him to let go of her? No.
All right.
Did it even look like she was actually being hurt? Don't you think, isn't it reasonable that if Sally Bell or Nancy K. Jones thought that Kathy was actually being harmed in any way whatsoever, that they wouldn't have either called 911? Kay Jones would have called Susan, because remember, she was house sitting. She was aware that Collin was allowed to be there, that he had arrived the day before, his car hadn't moved. So she's sort of keeping an eye on the house. If either of them thought that Kathy was actually being harmed or being forced to do something against her will, don't you think, as the good neighbors that they were, they would have alerted someone? They didn't, because Kathy's saying she was being hurt and let me go.
Sally
They
Bell
don't know
and
her.
Nancy Jones.
But I think you can interpret that statement from Kathy, knowing what you know about Kathy, as being just one of the many things that she claimed happened that didn't actually happen. For instance, when she said on one of her multiple phone calls to Susan, or in a text to Collin, there are a lot, so I'm sorry if I don't remember exactly where it came from. She said, I'm scared, Collin, you battered me, or you hit me, or you beat me before you left on Saturday. Remember the ring videos in every room in the house except the bathroom. And for the most part, she and Collin are on ring video. The state has given you some ring video. The defense has given you some additional ring video to sort of fill it out a little bit better. On none of that ring video is Collin ever touching her.
That's a good point.
So isn't it reasonable that even though she claimed Collin hit her, beat her, struck her before he left the house on September 7th, and there's no proof of that, that her saying hurt me, let go, was just her making something else up? There's another reasonable interpretation of Kathy saying, "You're hurting me, let go." Remember, she was furious with Susan, with her mom, like furious. You heard her yell several times on the ring video at Susan. She was pissed off that Susan had let Collin come to her house, which, as you may recall, I asked several witnesses about this. And the reason I asked them about this is because I wanted it to be clear that it was permissible for Collin to be at Susan's house.
Okay.
It was permissible to his probation officer, who he emailed. It was permissible to the courts. You saw the pink paper that Kathy tried to make a big deal out of that said Collin may go to visit his grandmother out of county, just notify the probation officer. It was permissible under the 751 plan, the concurrent custody. There was nothing anywhere or in anyone's mind, except perhaps Kathy's, that said that Collin was not allowed to be at Susan's. Nevertheless,
I don't know. Is there a distinction between him being allowed to visit the grandmother, which I presume would actually require the grandmother to be present on the premises, as opposed to him just, being in a home by himself? I don't know. I wonder if that's a distinction that the prosecution should have focused on.
Kathy's pissed at her mom because Collin is at her house and hasn't come home as quickly as she demanded. Remember, she'd also made some threats to Susan in her text, saying, "Your HOA hates you, and Freddie, Susan's dog, doesn't have a dog tag, and that's a violation." A violation of what? I don't know. But Kathy's mad enough at Susan at this point that who knows, maybe she was trying to get Susan in trouble with her homeowners association by causing a bigger scene than it actually was.
All right.
I'm not saying that's for sure what happened. I'm giving you reasonable interpretations of Kathy's behavior. But the bottom line is that there's no evidence that Kathy did anything against her will that day. And certainly no evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that she went back into the house that she'd already been in on her own, despite Collin touching her neck, her hair, her ponytail. She was not being dragged. She was not being forced. Plus, once she's in the house, the state has one theory of what may have happened. I'm going to propose some other, I would argue, more reasonable ones.
All right.
When she's inside the house, she has access to her phone, right? She has access to car keys. The doors are unlocked. You heard Susan say that the doors are kept unlocked. And then you heard Collin say on the 911 call when law enforcement first arrived and they're knocking on the door saying sheriff's office, he says, "Come in, the door's unlocked."
Well, you can't go anyway if you have a knife.
There's no evidence that Kathy was kept in that house against her will. None. In fact, to the contrary, Collin would have been probably really happy if Kathy had left. No one wanted her to have come there. And knowing what you know about Kathy, don't you think it's reasonable that if she had been forced to go back inside against her will, that she wouldn't have fought tooth and nail to avoid doing what she didn't want to do?
They're not going to
Remember,
argue
this is
that.
Somebody that the state's own witness, Detective Zanoniani, said it's either her way or the highway. So Knowing what you know about Kathy, if she was being forced to do something against her will, it's reasonable she would have fought it, right?
What do you mean? There's no telling. That woman might have only been alive for, I don't know, a few seconds in that trailer. So that's assuming that these folks had what, an hour of tussling. I mean, there's no tussling, but
The state himself said it doesn't look like there was a long drawn out fight throughout the house.
but
If Kathy didn't want to be back in that house, how did her flip flops make it all the way to the kitchen?
apparently she asked for it.
If Kathy didn't want to be back in that house, she would have been flailing like she had been doing just talking to Collin before. And if she had been forced to go back into that house and then forced to go to the kitchen and forced not to leave, the house wouldn't have been in as pristine a condition as you saw. The plant would have been knocked over. Something would have been amiss. Didn't have any evidence from the medical examiner either to say she had any scalp wounds or anything indicating that she had been pulled by the hair.
I don't know.
Not to mention the fact that, is it reasonable to you that Collin, despite what the prosecutor says, even though there's no evidence of how tall he is, how much he weighs, you've seen him in court, you've seen a picture of him shirtless. If you believe...
Actually, the prosecutor should have brought that information out through the grandmother, okay? As far as height, weight.
That Collin could have made his mother do anything physically. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not going to be able to convince you of anything. And if you think that Collin was dragging her by the hair, as the state seems to want you to believe, throughout that house, how come her flip-flops didn't come off right at the front door?
I'm not sold by that argument.
Collin didn't make Kathy do anything. Oh, but the AirPods, the one in the mulch, that proves that Collin made Kathy do something against her will. BS.
Yeah, that girl said bullshit.
No witness ever saw Collin in the mulch. They never saw him anywhere other than the doorway. But they saw Kathy march her way up from her car to the doorway. Isn't it reasonable that if she's pissed off at Collin?
That's what I'm trying to find out, old bag, because again, there's no testimony that he was searching up anything, no testimony that he went back to playing Roblox. I have no idea what he was doing for an hour.
Hot and angry that it fell out while she was just being herself. Same with the ones in the house. Once again, if Collin was ever forcing her to do anything physically against her will, and that AirPod came out because of something he did, you think she would have just been like, okay, I'm going to let you keep dragging me, instead of flailing about and, like I said, knocking something amiss in the house? No, that's not reasonable, because none of that ever happened. There was no kidnapping, period.
Okay.
The felony murder count, just also first-degree murder. If you were to find Collin guilty of that, that would mean you have to find beyond a reasonable doubt that he kidnapped Kathy, and that during that kidnapping, he caused her death. So I've already told you all the reasons why I think the state has utterly failed to prove a kidnapping. But even if you did find that, because I don't want to presume that you're going to find anything. I'm here to make suggestions, not to tell you how to do your job, like the prosecutor was trying to do.
Damn.
That hour and 15 minutes between when the neighbor saw Collin usher his mother inside as she's making a scene and when he called 911 distraught, you would have to believe that Collin forced Kathy to stay in that house that entire hour and 15 minutes and was inflicting some
You are
bodily harm
assuming she
or
was
terrorizing her that whole
alive.
time.
You want them to assume she was alive.
That's not reasonable. There was no kidnapping, and this was no felony murder. This was self-defense.
Okay, self-defense, all right.
So the state wants you to believe that this was a premeditated murder. In order to do that, once again, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin intended to kill her and beyond a reasonable doubt that he was not acting in self-defense. That's what you would have to find.
Okay.
You heard a lot of outrage from the prosecutor in his closing statement.
Outrage.
And this is an awful situation. But there was no outrage about how Kathy had behaved, how Kathy had treated her son, how she had treated other people. And I'm not saying you have to have outrage at that. You've heard a lot of unfavorable things about Kathy. And I am not going to go through every single one because you took notes, you heard and saw, you heard from the state's own witnesses, those things. Susan confirmed them. But remember, the incidents that you heard about Kathy being violent in the past or making things up in the past were all corroborated, either by police reports, DCF reports that Detective Zanoniani had reviewed, or by witnesses, by Susan. I was not presenting those to you to just bash Kathy, to make her look like a horrible person. To the contrary, I was doing my job because the law says, and the judge will tell you, that you have to consider prior acts of violence, prior acts of aggression, a reputation for dangerous and violent behavior, in deciding whether Collin was reasonable in defending himself against his mom on September 8th. I'm not going to read the instruction in detail because, like I said, the judge will do that for you. But the law requires you to consider what Collin knew about his mom to decide whether you think he acted reasonably in defending himself. You have to decide the reasonableness of Collin's actions in light of all of those things. In light of the fact that she had pulled a gun on him before, in light of the fact that she had threatened to kill other people before, in light of the fact that she had attacked other people before with weapons. Some of these things in front of Collin. So it's not even just hearing about it, it's witnessing it. He knew all those things about her. He knew what she was capable of when she was angry. He knew all of this, and it was in his mind when she came to him on September 8th. Collin also knew that Kathy would sometimes make things up to hurt other people.
How much longer do you have, man?
Such as,
somebody's always coughing. Somebody's choking. Is it Collin?
he knew that she claimed someone strangled her. She even claimed that she had video of it. But when the police reviewed it, it showed you she was strangling herself. He knew that she had called DCF on her own brother, got them involved in an investigation that was baseless. He knew that His mom claimed to do everybody else's schoolwork, including her own mother's dissertation for her PhD. He knew this about his mother. Now, luckily, those threats and made-up stories that Kathy had told in the past didn't ever result in any serious consequences for those people. But Kathy had never suffered the consequences of making those stories up either. And what happens when you don't suffer consequences? You continue the behavior. And sometimes she was...
I don't know. Considering that the woman is not alive, that statement, I don't know. Is the defense saying that she now learned her lesson, or what exactly is she saying?
Was actually even believed when she made things up. One glaring example. The day that she pulled the gun on Collin, threatened to shoot him or herself, and then handed him the gun and said, "Just shoot me," Collin immediately tells his teacher...
I'm with old bag on that. I don't know. That's might be a little too harsh.
Professor, who talks to the school resource officer, who gets the deputies involved. The deputies go to
about whether Collin should be
Kathy
held
at her house.
liable
Kathy says,
for
"No,
his actions."
I never pulled a gun." What? He's just being a brat. He was failing classes, so I disciplined him by taking away his phone and his AirPods. And they believed her.
What's up, Jason?
Okay. Now, at the time...
What do you mean you missed me last night? I made it very clear that I'd not be live last night. I don't know. I'm considering actually not going live on weekends. Maybe Sundays are okay. How's your weekend, though?
Maybe that wasn't so astonishing.
There, hold back.
But remember what Susan told you. Susan told you that Kathy admitted
What was
to
happening
her
last night?
that she had actually pulled a gun on Collin. So Kathy lied to the police. She also lied about him.
Okay, I don't know. Prosecution comes back with a rebuttal. I think they should have focused more on Big Sue, but we'll see what they do in their rebuttal.
Failing his classes. That was never true.
Dang, Jason's
and convinced them
popular.
that Collin was just being a brat. Despite the fact that Collin had given a detailed account of what his mother did to him with her gun.
All right.
They didn't believe him. They believed that he was just being a brat. Don't get me wrong, Collin could be a brat. I am not trying to make him look like an angel and Kathy look like the devil. You heard him on the Ring video and how he talked to his mom. Disrespectful. Absolutely. But that doesn't make him a murderer.
Okay.
Also, look at his role model. That sounds awful, but we all talked about in jury selection that kids kind of do what they know. Their parents are their role models. Their parents teach them by not only talking to them, but by their own behavior.
All right.
They cussed back and forth at each other. Is it an ideal parental-child relationship? No, but that's how they existed. You heard Kathy cussing at a number of people, including her mom, and cussing and claiming Collin had put a lid on her cup too tight and that it caused her to cut her hand.
That should say a lot about Big Sue, too.
Did you see a cut on that video? Did you see her trying to stop any bleeding? No. Another example of her making things up.
Okay.
So even though Collin could be a brat and disrespectful to his mom, but what 17-year-old isn't at times, you cannot ignore the fact that Kathy told her mom, yeah, I lied to the police. I actually did pull a gun. You cannot ignore that fact. And it was in response to his mother pulling a gun on him that Collin started making these statements that the state has conveniently termed threats, but without wanting you to consider all of the words in those statements. And that was the same incident where Kathy lied to the police about not pulling a gun on Collin. Remember, he ends up Baker acted because he begins the litany of times that he said, I don't feel safe with my mom. I'm afraid what she'll do to me. I'm afraid if she pulls a gun on me again, I'll have to defend myself. If she does those things that we now know she did, I will defend myself.
Oldbag actually brings up a good point. Oldbag says that Thornhill basically said that Kathy didn't receive any consequences for actions and so never changed, but Collin has killed twice. So shouldn't we hold him accountable? That wasn't a great statement. Yeah, I don't know why she said that. That was, again, maybe she's not scripted and she's just going off the dome, but that was a really reckless statement to make.
You even saw him on body-worn camera footage telling the officers that if she does this to me again, if she punches me, if she attacks me, I will defend myself. I'm afraid. I don't feel safe at home.
All right, so here's what is interesting. Okay, so Colin and Kathy, they lived in Big Brother. Okay, that was the Big Brother house. But I just realized that as much as this home was under constant surveillance, we don't exactly have footage of Kathy doing the things that the defense is alleging here, right? So I don't know. I have questions. Obek says, I wonder how I'd feel if I'd seen the videos. Which videos?
But no one would listen. Over and over and over, he tells people in authority this. They believe Kathy, they don't believe him. I want to propose a possible reason why they didn't listen to him.
Oh, I see.
Once they found out that he had been arrested for a shooting death in Oklahoma, despite the fact that he was never charged with that, everybody decided, we can't believe him. We have to believe her. Look at his past. And that is an awful shame because there are facts and evidence to show you how Kathy behaved.
Okay.
You have her own words to her mother that she pulled a gun on her own son. People in authority ignored Kathy's well-documented history of violence towards others.
All right.
They ignored her well-documented history of aggression and volatility and impulsivity. They ignored the fact that she owned a gun. They ignored the things she had done to her ex-husband. They ignored that she had stabbed him and burned him and pinned him to the house. This is all in police reports and DCF reports. They just ignored it.
Yeah, Callie, because that's what I was thinking. Because again, the defense is saying that we've not seen Collin do any of these things that the prosecution was alleging. But if this house is so bugged, we should be able to see, something. Callie says that's true. With all the cameras in that house, we would have seen it. Yeah, unless they didn't go looking. I don't know why they wouldn't go looking. It makes sense to actually go looking.
And these are just the documented episodes that we know about of Kathy being violent towards others. You saw how she acted on her own Ring video, right? And this is her knowing she's being recorded. So if that's how she behaves when she knows she's being recorded, Think about what she might do when she's not being recorded. We also know she beat Collin with a belt in front of her own mother.
Where's the footage of that?
And when Susan tried to intervene, she tried to claim that law enforcement had sanctioned that behavior. She claimed that Corporal Rentis told her it was okay. Well, you heard from Detective Zanoniani that law enforcement would never sanction such a thing.
Zanoniani.
The day before Kathy died, you've seen the ring video. You saw that she and Collin had an argument about putting up the bookshelf. You saw that he was disrespectful to her, but you also saw that her reaction to that was to kick him out, which she lied about later too. She claims on the phone with her mom on the ring video, I never kicked him out. I never kicked him out. I never kicked him out. Watch the ring video again. Listen to her words. Get out and don't come back, even if you're bawling your eyes out. Beyond that, give me your house keys. She took his keys to get back into the house that he lived in. You can't see it in the States ring video that they played, but I admitted a defense exhibit that we only played a short clip from, but it's longer. You can watch it if you don't trust me or
Why don't you play the whole thing?
me. But in that clip that you didn't see, but is in evidence, it shows the view from the living room. And it shows her actually taking the keys from Collin and putting them on the hook inside the door. And then her closing the door and locking it behind him. And you may also remember that the key ring that was on the kitchen at Susan's house was just a car key with no house keys on it. Yeah, those were to Collin's car. No house keys. So she kicks him out over him not helping with the bookshelf. Should he have helped her?
Levine doing?
But was it so unreasonable to think that if you put up a bookshelf that's not anchored to studs, that it might be a problem? So all of this is going to Collin's state of mind the day before Kathy comes to him at Susan's house. It's something you must consider when you're deciding whether the state has proved with facts and evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that
We're almost
Collin
there. Kind of.
wasn't reasonably defending himself
You're at least an
against his
hour
mother
away.
on September 8th. And would a reasonable person defend themselves like Collin did? Sort of on a separate note, the state has argued that the text that Kathy sent to Collin, threatening all sorts of things, because you know she threatened all sorts of things that were not true, right? Won't go through all of them.
Okay.
But that this text where she says she's going to send all these ring videos of him supposedly confessing to planning a murder in Oklahoma, that provides a motive for Collin to want to kill his mom. Okay. First of all, you have to believe that the threat was true.
Okay.
Given what you know about Kathy, given the fact that no one's seen any ring videos of any such nature, and given the fact that Collin has never been charged with anything in Oklahoma, and given the fact that her deadline of 3 p.m. when she was going to supposedly send these to all these people had long passed before she got to Collin, isn't it reasonable to think this is just another thing that she made up? Because if those things existed, they'd be out there. They would have been in front of you.
All right.
And don't you think Collin knew that that was an empty threat? Knew that no such recordings existed? So this big motive that the state wants you to believe in, also BS. Just another one of her delusional lies. Something else she made up, like she made up things all the time, and that the state's own evidence proves to you. Then you have to think, even if you believe that the threat was true or real, beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to believe that Collin somehow made her come to him so that he could kill her. And that's just absurd. Kathy made the choice to go to where he was. And let's face it, Collin had been trying to escape his mother for quite some time, for at least a year that we know of, since September of 2023, when he got put in the Baker Act facility for something his mom did and lied about, when he said, "I don't feel safe." And that's what he was trying to do on September 8th when she kicked him out. I mean, on September 7th when she kicked him out. He was trying to escape her. Think about this. All the times that you've heard about Collin saying, "I don't feel safe. If my mom attacks me, I'll defend myself. If she comes at me, if she pulls a gun on me, if she punches me, I'll defend myself." Remember, Collin told people that he would rather be in the Baker Act facility than at home with his mother. He told people in authority he would rather be in jail than at home with his mother. He told people in authority he would rather be in foster care than at home with his mother. And the state wants you to believe that Collin is just a brat who didn't like the discipline he got, so he murdered his mom. That's also absurd. Because, as the state has pointed out many times, Collin had what they think is a great life with mom, right? So he gets to go on trips, absolutely got to go on trips. He lives in a clean, nice, organized home with plenty of food. Yes. He has a phone. He has an Xbox. He has a computer. He gets to go to college. Don't you think Collin, as smart as he was to be able to graduate early, would know that if he actually were to be placed in the Baker Act facility instead of going home with his mom where he didn't feel safe, or remain in jail instead of going home with his mom with whom he didn't feel safe, or went into foster care instead of going home with his mom with whom he didn't feel safe, he would get none of those wonderful things. None of them. He would not have a phone. He would not have an Xbox. He would not go on trips all over the country or the world. And yet he still said, "Please re-Baker Act me. Please don't send me home from jail with my mom. Please, I'd rather."
What do you guys make of that argument?
These are the things you know, and that the state has proved.
Okay. But the state has.
Collin was trying to escape his mom because he was scared. He was scared of what she would do to him, and if she attacked him, what he would do in response.
All right.
So, knowing all that, let's talk about September 8th. Kathy went to where Collin was.
Old Bag likes it.
Isn't it reasonable to believe, because let's be clear, the state has offered no proof, zero proof of what actually happened.
So I'm going with Callie on this one. That's what I was thinking. Callie says that academic intelligence does not equate to emotional intelligence. So I don't necessarily buy into that argument. That's what I was thinking as well. In the moment, right? Even if you don't want to go home, I do not necessarily know that Collin, and this is for somebody that was not Baker acted before, somebody that's sounds like he was not incarcerated before. So in the moment, that does not necessarily mean that he pretty much had a preview into the future as to what he would be entitled to versus what's taken away from him.
In Susan's house on September 8th? None. The state has offered no proof, zero proof of what actually happened in Susan's house on September 8th. None.
Okay.
Zero proof does not equal proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But isn't it reasonable to believe that Kathy, in her anger, her desperation to make Collin come home, that she picked up a knife and threatened him with it, which is in total conformance with how she's acted in the past? Absolutely, it's reasonable.
Okay.
The state wants you to think, despite any proof, that Collin dragged his mother to the kitchen, somehow kept her there against her will, either by beating her or holding her by the ponytail, and then somehow managed to get a knife out of the butcher block while still holding on to Kathy, such that she couldn't get away, to start this fight over the knife. That's absurd. And it certainly hasn't been proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay.
Isn't it more reasonable, given everything you know, that Kathy picked up the knife, threatened Collin with it, and he defended himself, as he's been saying he would do for a year?
Okay, I would have wanted to know how far away from the block Kathy's body was. I think that would paint maybe a better picture of what happened. What I mean by that is because I do not think this thing took longer than a minute. Okay. I think as soon as Colin got the mother into the house, that's when they get to action, right? But I'll just like to know, as far as positioning her body in relation to the actual butcher block or whatever. Um, I don't know. I just do not. I find it hard to believe that this would have been an incident that occurred over even 5 minutes. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I think if anything, it was immediate. I think
Also,
if I remember correctly, Obag, he was Baker acted on 3 separate occasions. As far as length, it doesn't sound like a month. It sounded any like days or weeks, but I did not know that anybody actually testified in detail as to the duration. But I think either on the second or third occasion when he was Baker acted, um, Kathy basically wanted him discharged against medical opinion or medical advice.
reasonable that Kathy knew what the outcome was going to be
In what sense?
when she picked up a knife
But she wanted the
and
son
threatened Collin with it.
to stab her?
You've heard of suicide by cop?
Apparently, she wanted the son to stab her.
Isn't it reasonable to think that Kathy committed suicide by son? She had never been able to successfully commit suicide before, despite her many attempts.
Okay, that's kind of a different argument. Or is the defense arguing that she picked up the knife, hoping that the son would actually take the knife away from her and stab her? Uh, I don't know. I think under these circumstances, I don't think that Kathy thought that her son was actually going to stab her. Sure enough, she may have said in the past that, um, she foresaw the son killing her, or she may have been scared of the son. But in the moment, I just do not know that she believed that her own son would actually kill her. Kelly said, "Oh, wow."
Isn't it reasonable that she pulled a knife on Collin, knowing that if she attacked him, that he would defend himself and that the end result might be that she died?
I don't know. In order, this argument is a little contradictory, right? Because if the defense is arguing that Kathy took this knife, attacked the son, knowing that the son would actually defend himself, that pretty much would mean that she has to be aware that Collin is physically stronger than she is, right? And I don't know. I don't know. It's a creative argument, though.
I'm not saying that that's what was in her mind, because we don't know what was in her mind.
Okay.
I'm saying that it's a reasonable possibility given everything you know about her.
All right.
It's also a reasonable possibility, a reasonable interpretation, that she attacked Collin with the knife. He has wounds. Dr. Garavan talked to you a little bit about mutual combat and how a struggle over a weapon can result in both people with wounds, which is what you see here. Exactly what you see here. You also, most of you in jury selection mentioned that self-defense is a right that each of us has. And those of you who own guns,
Oh, that's Florida,
said that
right?
they keep them nearby, often for protection. And I said, protection from what? And you said, if someone comes into my house and attacks me, I can protect myself and my family. So isn't it reasonable that that's what Collin did here? When Kathy came into the house where he was living, for all intents and purposes at that point, and that she attacked him with a knife, that he defended himself, as was his right. The state has proved at no level, let alone beyond a reasonable doubt, that Collin picked up the knife and attacked Kathy with it. That means you have to try and figure out, if there's no evidence of exactly what happened, you have to think about what was reasonable.
Okay.
And it makes way more sense, given what you know, that Kathy attacked Collin and he defended himself. They tried to get you to believe that Collin was rage-filled and hate-filled, and all of these malicious thoughts were geared towards his mom. If you believe that beyond a reasonable doubt, don't you think there'd be more than just one wound on Kathy? Sorry, she had two wounds. She had the neck wound and she had the hand wound. Those could have happened at the same time. You don't know whose hands were on what part of the knife during this struggle. If Collin was so rage-filled and had such hatred for his mom, don't you expect that there would be 5, 10, 20 stab wounds? That's something you can consider too.
Okay. That's a good point.
So the state played parts of the 911 call again for you, and they want you to believe that that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin murdered his mother and wasn't just defending himself. You can believe or disbelieve what Collin said. If you don't believe what Collin said, that still doesn't mean that the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he murdered his mother.
Come on, we need to end now.
Remember that. Also consider that Collin said there was a long fight and she fell on the knife. Knowing his history, don't you think of not being believed by people in authority repeatedly, that yeah, he may have not told the entire truth because he was scared?
I don't know. That's not a good. I don't know that that's a good argument. I don't know that that's a good argument.
That doesn't make him a murderer. Especially because when he went to the people who were supposed to protect him, law enforcement, doctors, DCF, and said, my mom attacked me with a gun. My mom pulled a gun on me. I don't feel safe. I'm afraid. I'll defend myself. Don't you think
in essence, the defense is saying that, okay, Collin may have said that his mom fell on the knife, but that's not exactly what happened. So it's different from what Collin actually said.
And then believing her when she says absolutely never happened, he's just being a brat. Don't you think he might be a little
said she's ballsy,
scared when he's talking to a 911 operator? Not to mention the possible shock because of what he had been through in a struggle over a knife with his own mom. And let's not forget the one wound to Kathy's neck. State wants you to believe that it was some vicious, forceful, rage-filled
What do you mean the shock?
wound. But remember what Dr. Garavan said? He said that it actually doesn't take much force to go through the soft tissue in the neck. The biggest point of resistance is the skin itself. And that resistance is even less if the knife has a pointy triangular tip.
Yeah, I think so. I do not know that Collin was doing anything in that time, apart from maybe standing around.
That's what we have here. So, knowing that it wouldn't take much force to inflict that wound, knowing that Kathy has been violent in the past, knowing that she has threatened people in the past, knowing that she has attacked other people, isn't it reasonable that she pulled the knife on Collin, he defended himself, and there was a long fight over the knife? The messiness of that confined space between the island and the cabinet and the stove supports that there was a struggle over a knife. And don't you think it's reasonable that during a struggle over a knife and that confined...
What do you mean by messiness? Is she referring to the blood? Because if there's a struggle over a knife and there's blood on the floor, that means that Kathy is already stabbed.
Area, and who knows what positions anybody was in. State sure can't prove any. That
she's feisty.
Gravity may have played a part in that little bit of force that was necessary to cause that wound. As I said, these are interpretations based on what you do know. But don't forget, I don't have to prove exactly what happened. It's the state's responsibility to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin did not act in self-defense.
All right.
So let's talk about what the state may have proved beyond a reasonable doubt. One, by way of stipulation from us, that there was no foreign DNA.
Okay, so Obag says that he was probably scared to call the cops too. If Collin did this, why call the cops? He knows how it looks. Why not run? Running is probably far worse than just calling 911 and saying that, Your mom fell on a knife?
Under Kathy's fingernails. Okay, that's something you have to accept as true. What weight to give it is up to you. But so what does that mean? That means she never scratched Collin with her fingernails. That's it. Or at least not on the fingernails that they took the swabs from. So why is that important, or why should you consider that?
All right, old bag.
Well, you would expect she would have scratched him with her fingernails if she was actually being dragged into the house or across the living room into the kitchen and being held against her will.
Okay, how does the process?
No DNA, no scratches.
I think that's indicative of no struggle.
That means no struggle with just her fingernails. So that piece of evidence does not establish anything beyond a reasonable doubt as far as whether Collin is guilty.
All right, so there's no struggle. I don't know. Defense, she's kind of contradicting herself because she wants the jury to believe that there was a struggle. So why bring up the fingernail clippings and saying that there was no struggle?
You know why else she wouldn't have to scratch him at all? Is if she had control of the knife. Because she doesn't need to scratch him and defend herself with her fingernails because she had the knife first. That actually supports that she pulled the knife on Collin first.
Yeah, Obed, but premeditation does not require a lengthy period of planning. That is not, I mean, it can, but for premeditation, you don't have to plan extensively in order for the prosecution to sustain a conviction.
They've also proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Kathy had bruises all over her body. Okay. Keep in mind that the lighting in the morgue,
She's boring.
When pictures are being taken for evidentiary purposes, are a lot different than pictures you take with your cell phone. There has been zero proof of how Kathy got those bruises. Dr. Garavan can't date them. He said they could have come from innocuous activities like doing chores around the house, like you saw Kathy doing on the night of the 7th. Certainly no evidence to show that Collin somehow inflicted those.
That's why I'm here, old bag.
So even though they've proved that there are bruises, they have not proved how those bruises occurred. So it's essentially meaningless.
Yeah, Benji said Thornhill is equally boring to him because she's not delivering with much conviction. Yeah, she's boring. I don't really, to me, there's not much of a difference in delivery between Thornhill and Levine. They're kind of, she's kind of monotone. Like, I don't know. And I mean, this is regular court, though. Regular court, you're not going to find attorneys jumping up on tables or the desk. You're not going to find a tacopina, and this is regular court. So regular court can be boring sometimes, but I just expected a little more from closing.
Or another possibility, reasonable interpretation, is that she got bruises while they were struggling over the knife.
Okay. So Old Bag says that she's getting boring now, but what she said is making her lean towards self-defense.
The state has also proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin had blood on him. So what? He had wounds. He performed life-saving CPR on his mother at the instruction of the 911.
I mean, we don't exactly know the type of wounds that he had. I don't remember that. I mean, they kept saying he has wounds. What kind of wounds did he have? I don't remember that in the actual evidence.
One operator, he held towels in his own shirt to her to try and stop the bleeding. You saw the bloody towels. It also supports that there was a struggle over the knife. It does not support that Collin murdered his mother.
All right. I mean, but to
The
find
blood on his
self-defense,
eyeglasses frame, I hope that
you're
was
pretty much
clear when I was
saying that he
asking
killed
the
the mother,
crime scene
but
tech
yet
that if
was
somebody's
justified.
holding towels and doing CPR and in this confined space, that they might adjust their glasses and get blood on it that way. But what about the blood on the backpack? Does that prove Collin's a murderer? Absolutely not. Remember I asked the question about the Collin's phone being in the car and that Kathy's phone could have been in her backpack and that was Kathy's phone that was used to call 911. So blood being on the backpack doesn't prove Collin's a murderer either. It may prove that Collin, after he tried to stem the bleeding before he called 911, had to go look for the phone to call 911. Or that in their struggle over the knife, before he called 911 in that confined space, that's how the blood got on him. The other thing that the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt is that Collin has said over and over and over and over and over and over, I don't feel safe with my mom. I'm afraid she'll attack me. I'm afraid she'll hurt me, and I'll have to defend myself. They've tried to skew the statements to make it sound like he just walks around going, I'm going to kill my mother, not if she does something to me first.
Okay.
So I want you to think about this. If Collin really wanted to kill his mother, and that he wasn't acting in self-defense, why on earth would he have telegraphed this to every person in authority at any chance he got?
What do you mean?
He told people in authority that if she attacked him, he would defend himself because he was scared. He was scared of what she would do. Much like Susan said she was scared.
I don't know. There's on one of those body worn cameras, okay? There's a statement where Collin, I believe he's talking to law enforcement, I believe the juvenile people. And the statement was something along, let me see if I can find it. Because I've written, I don't know, I have too many notes. I'm probably not going to find it. But the statement stood out to me, okay? It stood out to me from a legal perspective because the statement was something along the lines of, if I think, it was something along the lines of, even if he thinks that the mom is going to attack him, and I'm paraphrasing, but even if that thought is not rational, then he might do it. So that stood out to me. And if the prosecutor, that's actually something that the prosecution should have hammered home, okay? Because it does make a difference. It's not just that you think that somebody is going to attack you, but is that belief? Zeta needs to stop drinking soda. I bought the little mini packs, and that's all she's been drinking all weekend. She needs to drink some water. Anyways, I just heard her open. Okay, no more soda. Anyways, let me move on. So it's not just that Collin thought that his mom was going to attack him, but is that thought rational? Is it reasonable? Because again, in New Orleans, this was back in the dates definitely over 10 years ago, because Zeta's 10 years old now. There was a judge, I'll have to find it. There was a judge in New Orleans, okay? She was arrested for, I don't remember, again, this was over a decade ago. I don't remember. I know she pulled a gun out on a man in a parking lot. I don't remember if she just pointed the gun or if she actually shot the victim. Okay. In any event, I guess she was so startled because she's in New Orleans and she saw a black man, so she freaked out a little bit. But it's one thing to, have your fears. I have fears of a lot of things, but that fear does actually have to be rational. It has to, you cannot, listen, if you're so scared of anything and everything that moves and you have a gun, you're going to get yourself in some serious trouble. And that's not legal advice.
Of what Kathy would do. You can also consider that if he, for months, if not longer, wanted to just kill his mom, and this is a little sick.
What?
But there were a number of ways he could have done it that would not have implicated himself, especially after he has told people in authority, if she attacks me, I'm going to defend myself and I might kill her.
And how could he have done that?
One of the many cruises they went on could have pushed her off the cruise ship.
What on earth?
Could have slipped.
I'm sorry, defense is a little. Wait, what? Absolutely not. I don't know that you get on a cruise ship with a lot of people. Come on now. Come on, Thornhill. No way, not on a cruise ship.
Defend myself and I might kill her.
What?
One of the many cruises they went on could have pushed her off the cruise ship.
What on earth?
Could have slipped some of her medication, legal or otherwise, into one of her many drinks.
That is just stupid. Of course he's going to get caught in their residence. And there's going to be a toxicology report. What are you talking about, Thornhill? Why are you giving this kid ideas to begin with?
Could have shot her. If he
In that big brother home? Of course not.
was as forcefully strong over Kathy as the state wants you to believe he was, he could have forced her into the bathroom.
Oh,
And there
wow. Kelly says apparently on cruise ships they go unsolved. I don't know though. I'd like to think that I'm constantly under surveillance. I'd like to think there's surveillance cameras on cruise ships. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'll leave it alone though. I'll leave it alone.
her own home where there were no ring cameras and slit her wrists in the bathtub.
No, Thornhill. No. The angle is going to show. No. There's no such thing as a perfect crime. What?
In an
I don't know. Now I have serious questions. I have serious questions about
any
Thornhill.
of those scenarios, he wouldn't have had to rely on her coming to him, her driving hours
Yeah, but the ring cameras are going to show him disconnecting them. What on earth?
to get to him. He didn't want to kill her.
Okay.
You heard him on the body-worn camera footage. I don't want to kill her, but if she attacks me, I will defend myself.
All right.
The state has proved nothing of significance beyond a reasonable doubt to you,
Okay.
except that Collin and his mom had a very disturbed relationship. And also perhaps that they never should have been living together.
Mm.
You heard about other family members who were periodically estranged from Kathy. These were all adults with their own lives.
Yeah, where's Christopher?
Collin, who also clearly wanted to separate himself from his mother, was still a kid without the agency or the autonomy to really sever any connection with her.
All right.
Right? He's telling people, I don't feel safe. I don't want to go back with my mom. And yet they kept making him do that. It's kind of like someone saying, say, a zoo worker or a circus worker that's responsible for taking care of a lion in a cage.
All right.
Don't make me go back in that cage with that lion. It's bared its fangs at me. It's reared up at me.
Go find another job.
But luckily, every time I was able to get out before it attacked me and caused me harm. And the zookeepers And the circus people kept saying,
That story
"He'll be
better
fine,
make
he'll
sense.
be fine. Go back in the cage. Go back in the cage," and closing the door behind him. Doesn't mean that the lion is in attack mode all the time. The lion could be majestic. And
that is kind of different though, because Thornhill pretty much just made the argument that Collin Minor does not have autonomy over where he gets to live, but with the zookeeper, go find another job. So I don't know how this story, I guess she's trying to relate it to Collin, but I am not. I don't know. I don't know that it translates as well as she's hoping it does, or maybe I'm just being overly critical.
charming to audiences and cute even sometimes.
Yeah, Benji. Apparently the mom's the
Could
lion
seem
and he's the
calm,
zookeeper.
like you'd want to pet it. But it was, after all, a violent being.
Sheesh.
And just because the poor zoo or circus worker was forced to go back into
Circus
that cage
worker.
time and time again,
What a
when the
clown.
lion finally managed to attack him and he couldn't get out, you can't blame the person who was forced into that cage over and over and over for defending himself.
Okay, so apparently what I'm understanding here is that the system has allowed Collin to do this. So it's a systemic failure that allowed him to supposedly kill his mom. That's what I'm making of the defense closing.
Each one of the authority figures that Collin begged to take him away from his mother
Okay.
ignored him, failed to protect him. They had the power to make the if part of Collin's statements that he might harm his mom
like that line.
not come true,
I like that line.
and they didn't. So, been through a lot. Gonna give you one final thought.
Okay.
Remember again that
Where are you going?
Collin is presumed innocent. Okay? Unless and until the state can prove beyond a reasonable doubt with evidence and facts that he kidnapped and murdered his mother.
That's a good take,
So
Benji.
that's like saying you have to start with seeing the vase in black. That's the presumption of innocence. In order for the state to overcome that presumption of innocence, they have to provide you with facts such that you can only see the faces, such that you don't see the vase anymore. If you can see both the faces and the vase, that's reasonable doubt. The state has in no way come close to proving to you beyond a reasonable doubt that only the faces exist. They have failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin did anything other than defend himself against his mother, and that what he was afraid would happen actually happened.
Okay.
Your verdict has to be not guilty.
All right. That was good. The middle was a little boring, but I like the end of that closing. And then Benji says the system is a business and killing the lion is bad for business. So Benji also says that Collin is definitely fired for doing that. What, fired by Domino's? All right.
One more short 10-minute recess. I think you need to finish making your lunch selections because we'll hear from the state in rebuttal, and then I'll go directly into the instructions. So we'll take 10 minutes.
All right, please.
All right. Okay, I'm going to take a quick minute. I'm going to take a quick minute to stretch my legs. So I'll just go back to that closing again.
Drinks.
I'll be back.
could have shot her. If he was as forcefully strong over Kathy as the state wants you to believe he was, he could have forced her into the bathroom in their own home where there were no ring cameras and slit her wrists in the bathtub. And in any of those scenarios, he wouldn't have had to rely on her coming to him, her driving hours to get to him. He didn't want to kill her. You heard him on the body-worn camera footage. I don't want to kill her, but if she attacks me, I will defend myself. The state has proved nothing of significance beyond a reasonable doubt to you, except that Collin and his mom had a very disturbed relationship. And also perhaps that they never should have been living together. You heard about other family members who were periodically estranged from Kathy. These are all adults with their own lives. Collin, who also clearly wanted to separate himself from his mother, was still a kid without the agency or the autonomy to really sever any connection with her, right? He's telling people, I don't feel safe. I don't want to go back with my mom. And yet they kept making him do that.
All right, I'm back. Oh, okay. So Benji said he'd have been fired by the zookeeper. I do not doubt that. Okay, I do not doubt that. All right, let us get to the rebuttal. We have about 30 minutes left, maybe 40. Let's get to the rebuttal. You see, Mr. Levine, he's always looking up to the sky. Let's see, we're going. All right. That man's always looking up to the gods. All right. Okay, how much time you got?
Mr. Levine, rebuttal.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about 6 minutes away from hearing the jury instructions. It's going to be a lot shorter.
Oh, he said 6 minutes? Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Levine. Come on, Mr. Levine. All right, so that means we have about 10 minutes before you find out the verdict.
Mr. Levine, rebuttal.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about 6 minutes away from hearing the jury instructions. It's going to be a lot shorter than the first time around.
All right.
And we're going to finish up with the rest of the PowerPoint. Those two photos there, as you heard Dr. Garavan say, are consistent with defensive wounds.
Right.
Open, gaping, fresh defensive wounds. Kathy doing what she could with her bare hand to try to prevent that knife from going through her neck. Remember, the defendant, his hands were pristine. No cuts, no bruises, no stab wounds, nothing. Because Kathy never had that knife. So how did this happy, smiling young lady turn into those last photographs you saw?
A couple quick yes or no questions I almost forgot before we go. And do you think he's capable of killing you?
Yes.
She was quite aware that he was capable of killing her.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Now, how did the defendant act when his mom did something as simple as take away his Xbox and his phone to try to instill some discipline discipline action.
You stood up and said, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Yes, you did. I was there. I was saying no.
I know, and I think the prosecution should have, because to me this sounds like Granny that was talking. Okay, that sounds like Susan, if I remember correctly. They should have confronted Susan with that, with her own words.
Why does she think he's a psychopath and a murderer? Sometimes when you protest too much, you're scared of the reality.
I'll say it to you like this, if you want to know. Collin 1 is, I guess, he's who just wants to survive, help people, and do good things in the world. And Collin 2 is the one that protects Collin 1 in situations where he can't escape from. And Collin 2 is the one that killed someone.
Okay.
Because what's it going to come down to next time?
I don't think you're a pussy. I think that you are capable of killing your mother, but I don't think that you will.
That was the officer.
No, why would I?
I will let you get to that. Do you think Collin will let you get to that?
What's up, Jerome? Mr. Jerome Street.
I can't hear you, sir.
I guess you came at the right time, because we are about to find out the verdict, okay?
Why calling you a strong individual? Why would you submit in a roundabout way to Collin? What are we talking about?
It's the strongest version of me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant knows the strongest version of him is the one that kills and murders.
So how is the situation with you and Mom right now? Things calm down?
No,
you guys
no,
get along? Where are we at?
No, sir, it's not good. She thinks that I get shot of her. I don't. She thinks that I'm like psychotic, like literally psychopath, sociopath, something like that. I don't know exactly where she's at. She thinks I'm gonna kill her.
Okay.
She's 100% on the money.
Okay, what about you doing something to her?
Hold on, let's go back.
I get shot of her. I don't. She thinks that it's not good. She thinks that I get shot of her. I don't. She thinks that I'm like psychotic, like literally psychopath, sociopath, something like that. I don't know exactly where she's at. She thinks I'm gonna kill her.
She's 100% on the money.
Okay, what about you doing something to her? Are you able to control yourself?
I'm in a constant state of fight or flight, and I don't know. If I think she's gonna do something, even if she's not, I might.
There we go. That's the prior statement that I was talking about, right? So if he thinks, to me, that is an irrational thought, okay? The fact that you think, or the fact that he thinks the mom is going to do something, even if she's not going to. So his thought, here's an exaggerated example of that. So let's say they are home. Obviously, it doesn't apply here because Susan was not chopping up vegetables or anything. But under these circumstances, let's say that this was actually their home and there are no cameras. There's no big brother, okay? So if the mom was chopping up, I don't know, onions or garlic, she's trying to make a beef stew or something. So the moment that he sees the mom, go to the block, take out a knife, if he thinks that the mom is going to attack him, even if there are no signs of that, then he's pretty much going to attack. He's kind of, attack first, ask questions later. So we'll see how the prosecution draws this out. But from a prosecution perspective, that's what I would have hammered on. And I did not watch this rebuttal. Okay. I know I don't have that much time. I just have real life experience, having both being a prosecutor and a public defender. All right.
Act.
Oh, he acted all right.
Okay. Do you have more than that?
This is what the defendant said to his own grandpa, Robert Wallantis, whose daughter was brutalized by the defendant.
Okay.
My grandson was very aggravated at his grandmother and his mother. He said, I am so tired of these two bitches.
Sheesh.
I'm disgusted. He said, my mom, I keep thinking over and over, I want to slit her throat. I want her to bleed out. I want to smell the blood. I want to feel the blood. I want to feel the life and the blood leaving her body. And that's exactly what he did. And that's just not Robert Wallantis saying that. When you look back at the text message that Kathy sent to the defendant before she came over, she said to her son, my dad is sending me his recordings of you telling him how you planned my murder back in February.
Okay.
So that just corroborates what you should already know, that Robert told his daughter what was coming her way. And what was coming her way was exactly what the defendant said he wanted to do with her. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what he wanted to do.
It looks like he has good pain.
As he left his mom with that gaping hole, just as he said he would.
On graphic photos.
So the talk is done. Now it's time for action.
Exhibits.
When you go back in that jury room and deliberate, come back, dispense justice in the utmost way.
A man said dispense justice.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So I think so far this is the best trial I've seen in 2025. This is a really good trial. Trying to compare it, even 2024, I do not know that I saw a trial that was worthy of every minute of my time. This was it. But prosecution's perspective, I would have done that rebuttal a little different because we have Collin's words. Let me see if I can find those words again. I think I'm going back too far. Let's just see.
Why does she think he's scared of the reality?
Did not remember
that. People and do good things.
All right, Collin 1, Collin 2.
I don't think you're a pussy. I don't. Should have called Joe.
Calm down. You guys everybody's get along. Where are we at?
No, sir, it's not good. She thinks that I guess she had her. I don't. She thinks that I'm like psychotic, like literally psychopath, sociopath, something like that. I don't know exactly where she's at. She thinks I'm gonna kill her.
She's 100% on the money.
All right.
Okay, what about you doing something to her? Are you able to control yourself?
I'm in a constant state of fight or flight, and I don't know. If I think she's gonna do something, even if she's not, I might.
That's again, prosecution. That is what I would have focused on. If he thinks she's gonna do something, even if she's not, that would have been my focus. And the reason that would have been my focus is because the defense is pretty much arguing that, we've all seen Kathy's history. She has a propensity for being violent. They've given specific instances of when she was violent in the past. But the main focus should be on Collin thinking that, or basically him being prepared to act, one of those acts being killing his mother, even if she is not engaged in violent conduct. That would have been my rebuttal. It would have been my focus. Out of focus less on Wallantis, the grandfather. And the reason for that, again, we have enough accounts from neutral parties, law enforcement. The defense, when they got up on the podium, they pretty much said that the prosecution's witnesses are credible, with the exception of the grandfather. So, from a prosecution perspective, I would have reiterated that to the jury, right? Basically, again, use the defense words against themselves. They said these folks were credible, and they're pretty much, here are the accounts. Willantis, maybe a little memory problems. His timeline might be off, but that does not negate the fact that the defendant in this case, over time, has constantly talked about, made these threats about killing the mother. And you've heard him say that, you've heard him basically tell law enforcement that he's inclined to hurt his mother, he's inclined to kill his mother, even when she does not actually attack, even though she does not do anything that would lead him to believe that she's going to attack him. That would have been my focus. Again, as far as the prosecution is concerned, I still think that he treated Big Sue with kid gloves. I did not like that. He should have, I'm not saying that he should have been aggressive in his approach, but there's a lot that he should have brought out. One of those instances, again, it's the not surveillance, body worn camera, when Big Sue's pretty much confronting her own grandson, and she's saying something along the lines of something to the effect of, "You said let's get to it, okay?" So that's what I would have done. But let's move on. I think there's some jury action ahead. Or are they just going over jury instructions?
Defendant was not.
Yeah, we're not going to go over jury instructions just because we listened to those in their entirety. So we're not doing that again.
I spelled it out for you in deciding your verdict.
Mm-hmm.
There are no other laws that apply to this case.
All right.
Even if you do not like the
Apparently
laws
they
that must
cannot
be
borrow
applied,
from
you must
Alaska.
use them. For centuries, we have agreed to live by the Constitution and the law.
There was something ahead.
No juror has the right to violate the rules that we all share.
Let's see. I'm curious to see if there's a jury question. I am curious to see if there's a jury question. Why would they? Let's see. It's not always the case, but sometimes jury questions give a window as to, if there's a divide. What? Why is it muted? Oh, they're chuckling. Okay, what's going on? Oh, nothing happens.
Mr. Hendry, Mr. Levine is here for the state. The jury has a request. It's been reduced to writing. It's dated 2/4/25. It reads, Judge Abdoni, we are requesting court transcript from Susan Detman's neighbors, Sally Bell and Nancy Jones.
All right.
Sincerely, juror 1980896. Mr. Levine.
Okay. So just based on Ms. Bell and Ms. Jones' testimonies, again, I said that once the prosecution had Ms. Bell up there, because their testimonies did not exactly line up. Ms. Bell is a neutral party in this case, okay? She has no relationship with Susan Detman, all right? It's just somebody that lives across the road. It does not sound like they've ever spoken, and she minds her business. But when Ms. Bell testified, she testified that Kathy, she was animated, she was moving her hands, but she was very clear that, and here's the distinction. There are two main distinctions, maybe three main distinctions between Ms. Bell's testimony and Ms. Jones' testimony. Ms. Nancy Jones, she does not, according to the prosecution, she does not exactly have a clear view of Susan Detman's trailer. Not that it's obstructed, but her home appears to be, her lanai is at an angle, okay? But the main distinction here is that Ms. Jones and Susan Detman are some type of friends or acquaintances, okay? They have spoken before. At the time, Ms. Jones was actually keeping watch over Susan's house. If I'm not mistaken, did she have a key? Did she not have a key? I don't remember that part. But she was keeping an eye on Susan's mobile home. Okay. And they did have conversations about this case, right? So the main distinction is that the main distinction is that Nancy Bell had no dog in this fight. Okay, she had no dog in this fight. Her testimony was that she pretty much saw Kathy pull up. She walked up to the house and she said that Kathy was putting clothes into Collin's car, whereas Miss Jones said that Kathy was throwing clothes into Collin's vehicle. The other point as well is that Ms. Bell was adamant that who's this? The boy, the defendant, actually pulled or dragged Kathy by the hair, whereas Ms. Jones minimized that, and she said something along the lines of, I just know that her words were very distinct. Her use of words distinct from Ms. Bell's testimony. And here's the other thing. Miss Jones, again, who the friend, the neighbor with a grandmother, she called this an accident. Okay, she called it an accident. So again, not to say that she has a dog in the fight or she's hoping for a specific outcome, but it is very clear that she possibly could have been influenced by the grandmother who testified for the defense. And I do not doubt that Ms. Jones and Big Sue, they probably talked about the circumstances surrounding the demise of Kathy long beyond, the night of when it actually happened on September 8th of 2024. That said, the prosecution had enough testimony from Ms. Bell. It is not always advisable, whether it's prosecution or defense, if the witnesses are going to testify to the exact same thing and they're adding no other value to whatever testimony you're trying to elicit, probably only call one of them. And under these circumstances, they should have called Ms. Bell and left Ms. Jones off the stand. And the reason for that is because it just sounded like she was more, it just sounded like she was a little influenced by the granny, or at least I'll leave it at that. But again, and this is, if we have to go back to that really terrible trial out of California with the bad microphones, the ASAP Rocky, ASAP Rally trial. In that case, again, it was smart of Takapina not to call ill to the stand after they've already elicited testimony from 12. I mean, it's very clear that 12 was a bias. But under no circumstances would 12's testimony and 12's testimony and Il's testimony line up, even if they witnessed the same thing. Let's see, what else could these folks have done differently? I don't know that there's anything else to do. Defense, there's no need to critique defense because it's not their burden. But overall, I think we saw pretty darn good oral skills from both attorneys. Okay. We saw some pretty good suppression issues that came up in this case. And I think the case also highlighted the workings of the rules of evidence. All right. That said, I don't think there's anything else to add unless there's another question.
I'm amenable to any request, Your Honor.
Ms. Thornhill?
Well, Judge, we're not real time, and I don't believe that a transcript is available for that. I could be wrong.
Well, I don't think we provide transcripts because it's required to be done in open court. All I can do is permit a readback or a playback, but I don't think there's a recording. So,
Okay.
Is that correct, Madam Court Reporter? No playback? All right. So the bar has recommended certain instructions in this instance.
Okay.
First, the standard instruction directs or suggests they be told that transcripts are not available, but that they may have testimony read.
As we get into the verdict, I'm just going to put the link up here for anybody that wants to come up. All right. I'll put the link up there for anybody that wants to come up.
Back to them. And then I can combine that with the instruction that talks about how long it's going to take the court reporter to prepare it for readback.
Okay.
And then tell them to discuss their request further. And if they're not able to resolve their question about the requested testimony by relying on their collective memory, they should write down as specific as a description as possible of the part of the witness's testimony they want to hear.
Okay.
So I can do that, or I can say no. Just flat out no. So, Mr. Levine?
I'm fine with either one, Your Honor.
Judge, if I could have a moment.
All right.
Okay.
Because there's obviously something they cannot collectively remember, but
Judge,
you have the look of, you want me to say no on your face.
I do. I should not play poker with you.
No. Well, I should not play poker with anyone because I'm not very good at it.
I hear that because I also am bad at that. At any rate, at this point, I think because it's such a general request,
Okay.
tell them that transcripts are not available and leave it at that. And then if they come back on their own with a more specific request, maybe we can entertain the idea of asking them if they, letting them know it would take a while to have a readback done. And if they can narrow down their request further, that would be helpful. So basically baby steps. Start with no transcripts are available. Please rely on your collective memories.
Mr. Levine?
Could you please read their question one more time?
We are requesting, I think that says court. We are requesting court transcript from Susan Detman's neighbors, Sally Bell and Nancy Jones.
Okay. Okay.
Your Honor, I'm fine with the court doing whatever you feel is appropriate under the circumstances.
Okay. So I'm obviously at this juncture, both sides do not exactly know what the jury is trying to glean on. But from the defense perspective, I think the neighbors' testimonies are more relevant for the kidnapping charge, right? Because they're trying to figure out, does she voluntarily walk into the mobile home? Is she forced into the mobile home? What's going on? So I think at this juncture, prosecution is probably not worried, but defense is like, we don't want.
Is there some prejudice to taking two baby steps first and saying transcripts are not available? A readback may be possible, but we will need you to be more specific regarding your request or the portions.
How about 2.5 baby steps then? If you're not willing to tell them just no transcripts are available, please rely on your collective memories.
Yeah. So defense, obviously, they are on the ball. They don't want they don't want the jury to have a clear answer.
Of a readback may be possible if you can narrow your request further. Just so that they don't come back and say we want all the testimony of both witnesses read, because that I think is a problem, because then we could get into having a readback of every witness's testimony.
All right, so let me cobble something together out of these various instructions.
Okay.
You're fair. So they, no matter what they want.
They were short,
Okay.
right?
Yes, they were
They
fairly
weren't
short.
the longest witnesses in the world, but they also weren't the shortest.
Oh man, he's so low. He has enough experience to carry a murder trial by himself.
Saying it out loud, and as I'm writing it down, I'm thinking though, if we ask them to narrow their request, then that might risk the possibility of highlighting a certain piece of testimony over any other piece of testimony. So I go back to my original request of just saying that no transcripts are available.
Mr. Levine.
If we're gonna say there are no transcripts available, I think it should be included, but a readback may be possible.
Okay.
Any response?
I'm thinking, like I said, it obviously would be helpful to know if there's a particular area that they are asking for a readback on. But then, like I said, that could highlight one portion of one witness's testimony, and they may miss some other part of their testimony if we just have a partial readback. But on the other hand, they're asking for witnesses' transcripts of all their testimony. That tells me they're sort of fishing for something, which I don't think is appropriate for a readback.
So I'm not sure which.
So at this point, I think I'd rather you just say there are no transcripts available and leave the ball in their court as far as what they want to do beyond that.
I don't know. Are there wildfires in South Carolina currently going on?
Usually in this circuit, the judges err on the side of not over-explaining, not over-offering. So I think that might be the best way to approach it.
All right, well, the instruction suggests that I can be somewhat generous in my response, but ask them to be as specific as they can. So I intend to advise them transcripts are not available, to discuss their request. If they can't resolve it with their collective memory, then they may request to have
Sorry for the suspense, folks. We're gonna get there. Okay?
testimony read back to them.
We're gonna get there.
And that if they
Okay,
decide to make
upstate.
such a request, it should
Ah.
be as specific as possible.
I need to look more into it.
That's acceptable to the state, huh?
And over your objection,
Yes.
I will. That's how they will be instructed. So
What
let me just
the
finish
hell?
here.
Kelly, you will not believe this. Breaking, is this from, is today March, it is March 2nd. Anyways, the Guardian reports that Zelensky says he's ready to sign minerals deals and relations with U.S. What? I don't know. I'm not a politician. What sense does that make? What? Why? I don't know. Maybe he has no other option, no other choice.
All right.
Why?
So my intention is to advise the members of the jury you have asked that transcripts of testimony be provided for you.
Why would you do
Transcripts are not available. However, a readback of testimony may be granted at the court's discretion. I now direct you to return to the jury room and discuss your request further. If
What? So he's going to sell the country off?
you're not able to resolve your question about the requested testimony by relying on your collective memory, then you may request to have testimony read back to you. If you decide to make such a request, it should be as specific as possible. All right.
It is crazy to me.
We're ready.
All right. Okay, so let's see. They come back one more time. And what happened then?
Maybe.
Are they being dismissed for the day? What's going on? Come on, Judge. I don't know. He's not saying anything. I'm nosy, but I'm ready to move on to day 6. But yep. I don't know. He's not saying anything. So let's move on to day 6. Let's move on to day 6. Brooklyn, I'm not exactly sure. It's just a headline that I read. So I pretty much would have to read the article. Okay. All right. We don't need those reminders. Let us go to day 6. Let us go to day 6. Is that day 6? I cannot see. All right. Let's get into day 6. Am I sharing? Okay, so Brooklyn, I just said that I did not read the article. All right, let's see. So day 6, they were in court for a few hours, actually a lot. All right. We're almost there. We are. Ooh, that's loud.
You made it, too? All that good?
Yeah, I'm gonna send them over.
All right, what's going on? What's going on? Man, I cannot believe I'm going back to work tomorrow. I could use at least 2 more days. I have the weekend. Ooh, that's a nice suit. That is a nice suit. All right.
I know you are.
Anything before the jury arrives?
Yes, sir.
I know you are.
All right, so they have nothing. Is that it? There's nothing there. All right. Okay, so let's see if there are any more jury questions. I don't want to miss anything. How long? Okay, so they deliberated for 8. I think they deliberated for 11 hours, unless I'm mistaken. So let's see. Dang, no more questions? Did they ask for a readback? I guess not. All right. All right, folks. Are you guys ready? Let's see. What did Callie say? So, from my understanding, the agreement with the UK does not involve selling off half the country, but still waiting on more details. All right. Okay. Did I have fun, Jerome? I enjoyed my time off, that's for sure. I wish that I had more vacation days. Yeah, I wish I had more vacation days. Seeing as you work for yourself, Jerome, how many vacation days do you give yourself? I only have 5. We are in February. I only have 5 days left. 5 days left. What's Brooklyn? Okay, Brooklyn says, who does Collin have left? in life after he deleted his mother and father. There's Christopher, the brother. There's the granny, the dietitian. There's the grandfather, a step grandfather. But his mom had siblings. I don't know about the father. The mom had siblings. All right, come on. All right. Okie dokes.
It's 24 CF 8410. Mr. Griffith is present with Miss Thornhill and Mr. Hendry. Mr. Levine is here.
Okay, this I watched did I watch it in real time or shortly after? I don't remember. Was it in real time?
For the state. I understand the jury has reached a verdict.
Yes, Judge.
Let's have the jury, please.
You guys ready? Are you ready? Is Old Bag still here? I don't know. Is Old Bag still here? I don't know. Okay, you see, there's a lot of interaction between the public defenders and the client. The client is basically patting them both on the back. He's prepared for whatever. Yeah. This is it. This is it. All right, Jerome, you can come up though. Verdict in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't want to rush it. Maybe I should, but I'm not going to. I do not want to rush it. I mean, he's smiling at Granny. Yeah, I think Big Sue's out there. Yeah, no, Jerome. I know. I'm prepared for that. My question is, how much time do you take off? I know. I know that you work harder because there's no cushion, there's no safety net. So you definitely have to put in the work. Okay, Jerome said the smirk is weird. All right, let's see. Brooklyn said you work for yourself. Kylie's not ready. Okay, Jerome has a question. Love to Old Bag. Callie says, I think it's not guilty. Why do you think that, Callie? And then Jerome says the smirk is weird. All right, we have Mr. Levine. We have Mr. Levine back there. I'm trying to figure out what to do to my hair. It's Sunday, so you guys know I have to go in a bit because I need to go do my hair. I need to do Zeta's hair. My man's looking for me. All right, come on, Judge. I'm so impatient.
All right, please.
Okay, what are you, okay, Callie said she's undecided. What are you undecided about? Where did Brooklyn go?
Please be seated. If you are the foreperson, please raise your hand. For the record, juror number 1980896 has raised his or her hand. You may put your hand down. Juror number 1980896, if the jury has reached a verdict, please raise your hand. That juror has his or her hand raised. You may put your hand down. Please pass the verdict form to the bailiff.
Old Bag, where have you been? Where have you been, Old Bag? I'm about to read it now.
There are no defects nor omissions in the verdict. Counsel for the state, counsel for the defendant, rise and hearken to the verdict. Mr. Griffith, rise and hearken to the verdict.
State of Florida versus Collin, Griffin. Will the jury find as follows? As to the defendant in this case, the defendant, as to count one, the defendant is not guilty. As to count two, the defendant is not guilty. So say will this 5th day of February, 2025.
Even the what's her name, Thornhill, could not believe it.
Does the state wish to have the jury polled? You may be seated.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for the considerable time and
they
attention
did.
you have given
Holy.
this case. I also want to advise you of some very special privileges you now enjoy, having served on this jury.
Frequency, give me a break.
Juror can ever be required to discuss what has occurred in the jury room, with rare exception, and that would require a court order following a fully noticed hearing. For centuries, our society has relied upon juries to consider difficult cases. And during that time, we have agreed a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it.
Wow.
Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to have to speak about the jury's work. Although at this point, you are at liberty to speak to anyone you would like to about this case, including your deliberations, you are equally free to refuse to do so. A request may come from those who are simply curious, perhaps from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you individually to determine whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. On behalf of the entire 10th Circuit and all assembled here, I humbly thank you for your service. You are now discharged.
All rise, please.
Oh, that is funny. All right. All right. This was a brilliant trial. Okay. This was a really good trial. And the reason why I thought this would be a good trial to watch top to bottom was the verdict. Okay. But as I watched it, because I pretty much, again, coming in here, I'm surprised I actually never gave the verdict away. All right. So that shows good restraint on my part. And I took notes. I took extensive notes trying to figure out, I was trying to figure out what the turning point was in this case, right? I was trying to figure out what is the one thing that may have swayed the jury, okay? That's why, again, I wanted to watch this trial from top to bottom. So initially, I thought that the one thing that swayed the jury was, what is this? What's the mother's name again? Kathy Griffiths' propensity for violence. I thought, oh, maybe that's the one thing that the jury, that led the jury to a not guilty verdict. But again, when you watch the ASAP Rocky trial, I kept reiterating that, people undermine a jury's ability to follow the law to the T. But during jury instructions, or at least when the parties were crafting the jury instructions, the one thing that stuck out to me was Florida's stand your ground law. Okay, so that must have been the deciding factor. I think there was a juror that was interviewed. I actually never looked into it, but I can take a look because that was on Reddit. Okay. But just overall, that is because in any other state but Florida, this would have been a guilty verdict. But what is this? The Florida Stand Your Ground law allows people to use force, including deadly force, if they believe it's necessary to defend themselves. Okay. The law applies when someone is not engaged in criminal activity and is in a place they have a right to be. So that's why the defense kept emphasizing that Collin had permission. He had legal authority to be at his grandmother's home. Okay. Let's see. Let's keep going. And I think the prosecution, again, they should have hammered on reasonableness, because to me, just based on Collin's words, the prosecution could have made an argument that he was just not reasonable, right? In the sense that he pretty much said that even if the mother is not actually going to do anything, he's inclined to act. But as I was thinking about this case, because again, once I found out the verdict, which was the same day, I kept going back and forth. I was reading comments. I was trying to find out what people thought. And on Reddit, people would not stop talking about this case, right? And as I've been thinking about Florida's stand your ground law, and I was thinking about that law in conjunction with this Collin Griffith case. People are outraged that, he killed his father in Oklahoma. It seems that no actions were taken there. And I can say kill because there's no, as far as the facts have been laid out, there's no dispute that he actually shot his father to death. Okay. In this case as well, there is no question that, he grabbed a knife and stabbed the mother. It's just whether his actions were justified. That is the distinction here. But again, as I was thinking about the outrage as it relates to Collin, I've come to one conclusion. All right. This verdict should, or let me put it this way. If folks were not outraged when George Zimmerman pretty much killed Trayvon Martin, I do not understand why they're outraged about the verdict in this case, right? I cannot understand. I don't relate, but I'll leave it at that. Callie says he got away with murdering all his parents. Brooklyn says he did it. Even the judge is choking up. Old bag Collin did it, but it did seem self-defense. Old bag says, had the jury spoken at all? I think there was one person. If I remember correctly, a member of the jury had said that had they known that Collin, had they known that the person he killed in Oklahoma is his father, his vote would have been different. And then Jerome says, how long did the trial last? About a week, 6 days. Olbek says, you compared to two cases when you're telling us about this case that I suspected not guilty, but then I thought there's no way they're not gonna go. There's another case. I think, honestly, with this Collin Griffith case, there's another case out of Florida. I never took the name down, but it won't be difficult to find the case. There's another case that I out of Florida, and I think I need to start looking at Florida cases more because they're interesting. They have pretty interesting verdicts out there. So I need to focus on, Florida cases. And Cali and Brooklyn are worried about Granny. That's what the comments were saying. I did not read these comments, so let's see. I'm getting distracted. Okay, I think right. This is the OJ Simpson. I think this was the documentary that they were live streaming. Oh my goodness, South Carolina's on fire. Oh yeah, it looks pretty bad out there. Okay, let's keep going. All right. So they said the big question is who will be his next victim in self-defense. I don't know that that's a fair. I understand. I suppose from a lay perspective, I understand why this might be a legitimate question, but from a legal perspective, from a criminal defense perspective, I think that is an unfair comment. but we will move on from that. All right. Somebody said people attacking this innocent man for the correct verdict will be the next people self-defended against. Okay. Another person, I'm completely stunned. I can't imagine he'll just go on with his life and not do this again. I think we will be watching another trial for the psycho in the future. I don't know. These are some pretty, and again, I don't want to bring up or look up the Zimmerman stuff because I don't even know that I can read those comments, but okay, the jurors will need therapy once they found out the first person he killed was his own dad. The next victim will most likely be his misled grandmother, and we'll be back. People are talking about him smirking. Shoot, if I'm acquitted, man, I'd be out there twirling and doing all types of things too. Okay. Somebody said he smiled through the whole trial after killing both of his parents. I'm not gonna read that word. I don't recall this kid smiling. I don't know. Maybe I got it wrong. I just don't recall. I don't know that we've had, apart from day one, I do not know that we had a good view of him, with the exception of this person. Maybe was actually in court. I don't know. This is sickening. He is dangerous. Needing mental health. Blah blah blah. People are shocked. People are shocked. Apparently, they are really shocked. Apparently, shock of the year. I don't know. There are more cases coming out of Florida, with the exception of stuff with kids. I stay away from. I don't watch. I don't watch anything to do with kids. Apparently, his grandmother better sleep with one eye open after what the jury just did. I don't know. The case has come to the
Having found you not guilty in each count, you are hereby adjudicated to be not guilty in each count and forever discharged for these offenses. We will be adjourned.
Shout out to all public defenders, okay? They did a good job as far as suppressing evidence, especially the text to the attorney. I don't know that the text to the attorney would have made much of a difference though, because the jurors had enough instances of when Collin pretty much said that he'd kill the mother if so I don't know that it would have made that much of a difference, but I did I love the hearing regarding the suppression of that text. I thought that was good litigation from both sides. Okay, Olbag says, I'm not outraged. I'm kind of at a loss of how to feel. Okay. Jerome says, with that smirk, you will seem, I don't know. I think that's an unfair statement. There have been people, there was a young lady. She's not young anymore. She's grown. She went on to be a nurse, but it's I don't remember her name. She was pretty troubled growing up. But her troubles are very different from Colin, though. Yeah, her troubles are very different from Colin's because she grew up in a very troubled home. I believe she may have been essayed when she was much younger, to the point where she was doing it to her little brother. And she had a difficult upbringing, but she went through extensive therapy. And again, she was much younger. When she was going through therapy, she was a little girl, but she went on to have a successful life. um okay, Brooklyn says he seems to have luck on his side, getting away twice. Olbeg, I'm weird. I feel sad for him, sad for all of them. Brooklyn said sad for him. Olbeg, it sounds like a mess of a family. I'd like to hear from his brother. I don't know. I don't know that we hear from Christopher. He's moved on with his life. Jerome says, I know nothing about this trial, but listening today, the smell of blood and all of that is creepy. Okay. I don't know. Something in the making. Brooklyn says, not an ounce of sadness here. Maybe the public defender should let him move in with her. God damn, Brooklyn. Brooklyn, I thought you always liked the defense. What's wrong? What is wrong? But shout out to the public defenders, though. They did a phenomenal job. And again, the biggest difference in this case is that stand your ground law, okay? Because in a jurisdiction that doesn't have that law, maybe you have a different outcome, or maybe you don't, right? It's up in the air. But to me, as far as how this jury got to that, how the jury reached that verdict, it has to be the jury instructions. Um, let's see. Let's see if we can find a jury here. Collin Griffith, juror inter, and I don't even know that anybody actually agrees to be interviewed after this verdict. Probably not. He actually looked much younger. I looked much younger there. All right. Yeah, I don't know that. Again, what I was seeing was basically on, what is this? Oh, I watched this mess a few years ago. That was just, I don't know. I don't know what the hell they have going on. All right. Yeah, I do not know that any jurors have actually agreed to be interviewed. And I mean, if you get interviewed, I don't know that you actually show your face. I don't know that the juror actually shows their face. Yeah. Jerome. Oh, that's old bag. I'm sorry. You want to see someone creepy? Watch his grandpa. I don't know. I don't know, but this case is pretty interesting. I do not doubt that there was more. I kind of have an interest in Kathy, just as far as the case against the grandfather or her own father. Okay, so when I do have time, I'm going to dig into that a little bit. I want to dig a little bit. I want to see if we can find the case. It's going to be difficult though, because I'll have to find out the jurisdiction that they actually lived in order to find the proper court. But I have questions because apparently Big Sue did not know the outcome of the trial where her husband was on trial for doing something to the daughter. I don't know how you're not invested. Did you not ask your daughter? Did you not go to court? I have questions. But I am invested in that. And then I want to take another look at Oklahoma. Okay. I want to take a look at Oklahoma. And the reason I want to take a look at Oklahoma is because as I was watching this trial, I was wondering about the possibility of, the folks in Oklahoma pretty much reopening this case. I wondered about that. And then Jerome, you had a question. Do you still have a question? Okay, so Old Bag wants Christopher to come out the bushes and apparently associate himself with these people. Yeah, there's okay, so Obag says, I wonder if seeing how she acted changes how we would feel. In what sense? In what sense? Because the first video on September 7th, right? Just listening to the voices, to me, that's not as explosive as the defense made it out to be. And then as far as the following day, the September 8th, I don't want to say that she was erratic. I'm not saying that who's this Kathy was erratic, but she was definitely more animated than the day prior. Well, I don't know why you cannot hear me, Obag, because I am connected. Uh all right. Okay, that's it, folks. Enough rambling. I need to go do my hair. I need to go clean my floors. Usually my floors are done by now, but Zeta and I were out and about much longer than planned, and I also did not want to be up late talking about this case because I figured it would be about 3.5 hours. Um, okay. In any event, folks, this was a really good trial. A really good trial. We saw great advocacy from both the prosecution and the defense, and the attorneys definitely they conducted themselves in an admirable manner. I don't want to say professional because I don't like using that word, but I think they displayed behavior that I myself would like to model. They did really good. They did fantastic. In any event, so I've taken a lot of notes. I'll condense it into a shorter video, but that's like a next week project. Okay, that's a next week project. As far as tomorrow, I do not exactly know what we're. Zeta, you need to get in the tub. I do not exactly know what we're doing tomorrow because I'm just getting back to work tomorrow. I'm not prepared to get back to work tomorrow, but I need to go to work tomorrow. Um, Let me see. Maybe I take the night off, or I don't know. Do you guys want to come up here? I can come up here and just talk crap. Can come up here for 30 minutes. Um, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, she may have been messing with me, but I'm like, I can tell. I can tell that my mic is connected. In any event, folks, I am calling it a night. I know I've said that like 3 million times, but I'm really off. In any event, shout out to everybody, okay? Jerome, Obag, Cali, Brooklyn, Benji. And I know that Fever, when Fever finally gets on here, is going to be shocked by the verdict. He's going to be shocked by the verdict. Let's see. All right. Good night, Callie. I'm definitely calling it a night. That little girl needs to take a bath, and we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared for tomorrow. I don't feel like going to work, but I have to go. All right. And then Jerome says, "Have a beautiful night, everybody." All right, folks. I am off. And then as far as tomorrow, let me see. I have to make a decision now. Am I live tomorrow? Am I not live tomorrow? We don't really have anything to discuss, though. We don't have anything to discuss. So, Old Bag said, a shout out to Big Sue. A big shout out to Big Sue. Okay. Shout out to all public defenders because they fought. So they definitely they put in some work. Um, no, I'm not. I won't be live tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow I am going to skip. And the reason for that is because let me gather. I'm gonna have to gather everything that we have to do, and then let me plan out our next case. I think we move on to that's the thing because I want to follow a case from top to bottom. I don't want clips. I don't want to jump around. I need to understand how or why the jury is reaching a verdict. Let's see, what's our next case? I know Brooklyn really likes the YSL trial, but that case is just, I don't know. Fulton County's not for me. Yeah, I'm going to take off tomorrow. So that's going to give me time to figure out what our next case will be. So I'll reconvene on Tuesday. Tuesday, we are going to start 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, a regular time. And then we're gonna play around with a few things, okay? Because I love talking, you guys. I know. But I'm just giving you guys a rundown. I'm gonna play around because Jerome wants consistent days, okay? Jerome wants consistent days. I know that Brooklyn wants some pre-recorded videos, and I'm also for pre-recorded videos because that way I manage my time better. So as we get into this week, I'm going to figure out which days I'll be going live at night, especially when we don't have a trial. If we have a trial, different. When there's a trial, we're going most likely every night unless I'm sick or or I don't know, my man's around. But shout out to New York, okay? But yeah, we'll figure out a schedule. We'll figure out a schedule. That's what I have to say because I'm starting a new schedule where I'm behind on my reading, so I need to get with my reading. And I stopped working out sometime around November, and I need to get back to working out because I don't want to be in my 50s looking like somebody's grandma, okay? I need to be looking hot. I need to be looking, youthful. I need to be looking like a trophy wife. Yeah, so I need to get back. I need to get back to working out. So if I'm working out, there's no way I can be live every night. Otherwise, I'm not getting anything done. But I'll figure that out. Okay. Okay. Obeg apparently wants a live every night. When there's a trial, it makes sense. Is Fever here? Oh my goodness. We were just, how do you know? How do you guys know who's in here, but I don't know who's in here? Like, how do I know? Shout out to Fever. Fever, unfortunately, we are ending. I mean, I could replay the verdict for you. I could replay the verdict for you real quick and then, but I need to go. Let me know what you want me to do, Fever. All right. Oh, bag's funny. Apparently, live every night, read to us, workout while on YouTube, live workout classes together. Really, old bag? No, 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 no. What's up, Fever? I literally talked about you just a while ago. Okay. Yeah, no, 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 no. No, old bag, no. I'll have to figure out the schedule though. Okay, so Brooklyn wants to go through the Johnny Depp case again. We can definitely do that. I mean, we can go through Johnny Depp. We can go through. Oh, what was the guy? Wasn't that? No, that was. No, no, no. That's not Michigan. That was Wisconsin. Daryl Brooks or something. Was that his name? Daryl Brooks. Yeah, but we can go over Johnny Depp together. We can do that. Apparently boss you guys around. I don't know. I'll tell you to do squats and all types of things. Lift your weights. Get your muscles up. But yeah, all right, folks. I'm calling it a night, Fever. Please watch the replay. If you have time, watch the verdict. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the verdict, Fever. So commenting there. Let us know what your thoughts are. Okay, everybody. I hope you all have a fantastic Monday. Again, I am not live tomorrow. I'll be back on Tuesday, and that will be 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. All right. Apparently, Jerome can go in and out, and she'll be eating ice cream while pretending to do jumping jacks. We can schedule something. I don't know what we're gonna. We can call it like what, a race judicata or something. Anyways, that's enough talking. Obag, Jerome, Fever, Cali, Brooklyn. Shout out to Big Benji. Shout out to Benji's girlfriend. All right, folks, I'm out. I need to go. Bye.